there's Denny's with diners.
Yeah, I looked up Nathaniel Hackett, and it said he was a head coach in the NFL. I don't think he was.
Well, you'd be wrong. So he was. I mean,
no,
he was.
I don't think he qualified as a head coach. I think he was pretty bad at his job. So Denny's.
Well, yeah, but you're still a radio host.
Okay. Yes, but it's still bad at my job.
You're in the zone on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, a Friday edition of The Zone right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe, and Drake. We had up until 2 o'clock. We got you for the next 4 hours. We will talk some NFL football today, a lot of NFL football today, in fact. As the draft less than a week away, we will hang out with Matt Derrick coming up at 11 o'clock, Chiefs Digest. He will be our guest. Ryan Tracy joins us coming up at noon. And then we will talk with the executive producer for the NFL Network, Charlie Yook. He has produced the NFL Draft on NFL Network for the last 15 years, and maybe it's just something that I'm excited about to talk to, because I think it's fascinating, like the behind-the-scenes stuff as to you've got 3 days worth of draft picks, and every single pick that comes in, you have to play the right video. You've got to play the right things. You've got to be able to, while that's going on, you're switching to whoever is talking and which camera is this while you're making sure. I mean, the prep work, I can't imagine all the stuff that goes into it. And then the traveling road show. It's one thing when it was at, Radio City Music Hall year after year after year. You had everything in place, all good. You knew exactly what it was going to be. Let's just do the same thing we did last year. And now that it's become this traveling party, certainly more difficult, and what Kansas City will be. So looking forward to that conversation with him. And I always wonder, like, how early they get the pick. Like, just how early is the pick known? Like, in the first round, it always goes to the end of the 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. Always. It's like 9:58, or sometimes it goes past, and it's like the pick is in. Like, did they get the pick with like 5 minutes left? And then Roger Goodell is like, no. Let's chill here. We know who they're going to take. Let's just hold off. Because it is a requirement that the number one pick not be announced until the full 10 minutes is taken up. I think that's actually true. I joke a little bit, but I really do think that's true. Like, the Panthers know who they're taking right now, but it will be the full 10 minutes of allotment of build-up so that the networks in this made-for-TV event can talk about it and build it up and set the draft and all of that stuff. So now they're on the clock. The draft has started. It's not the Panthers are on the clock and they have taken Bryce Young. It's the Carolina Panthers are on the clock. And then it's, all right, here we go. And then 10 minutes of talking. And then they take the guy that everybody knows they're going to take with that number one pick in Bryce Young. But I just, like, how early do they get the picks and get ready to put all the graphics up and get everything ready? So one of the other things, too, that I really like about the NFL Network, I think NFL Network and ESPN do a great job. I think both of them do. They actually had to do the combined draft in 2021. Yeah. Or was it 2020? It was 2020 that was the combined draft, because 2020 was at Roger Goodell's basement.
Yes.
In his man cave.
Yes.
So they just did one combined broadcast, ESPN and NFL Network, working together. So they both do a pretty good job. What separates NFL Network to me is Saturday. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm not watching. I'll flip back and forth on ESPN and NFL Network. I'll have both of them, recording, so that if I'm watching ESPN and the Chiefs pick 31 and they have their breakdown, well, then I'll go and catch the recording for the NFL Network, what their breakdown was, all of that stuff. But Saturday, it's NFL Network. Because ESPN sort of has like a talk show with the draft kind of in the background. Mm-hmm. And you're not getting the picks. You're not even getting breakdowns of the picks. They it'll be like, all right, let's see who the last 10 picks were. Bing, 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 bing. And then they'll pick one or two out of the last 10 picks. Well, if the Chiefs are selecting in the 5th round, I'd like to know what it is about this guy that they liked. What can he be in the NFL? And the NFL Network, every single draft, every single pick on day 3, on Saturday, is talked about. It is your deep, very into the draftnik, super diehard NFL fans. That's Saturday. And that's what I want to watch. If I'm watching the NFL draft, I'm watching it for the players that are there, not just having a conversation around the NFL, because we have that every other day.
Every other day it's available.
General draft pick.
I want to know why the 214th overall pick is going to change the league.
That's right. I want to know that when Trey Smith is drafted in the 6th round, why he's there in the 6th round.
That's an actually good one. Yeah, like there, and every one of these guys has some form of story.
Right.
Open up the Beast if you want to know the background of any of these guys. There's always something there.
That's exactly right.
Why did this team make this pick? Tell me.
Why is everybody online going, Trey Smith could be the steal of the draft? He's not supposed to be there in the 6th round. And then I turn on ESPN, and they're having a conversation about Bryce Young.
Which is great. Which would have been crazy because that was like he was a sophomore, a freshman, maybe.
That's right. They're like, well, I don't know. Can we talk about what's going to happen in 2023?
They're going to talk about Caleb Williams this year, so I mean, there is some precedent for this.
I guess they'd probably be talking about Trevor Lawrence at that point. Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. Is he the Mormon Mahomes?
Man, it feels like Trevor Lawrence.
You remember Zach Wilson, the Mormon
Mahomes? Absolutely.
Trey Lance, the 49ers did all of this to trade up for him. How soon can he be a part of it? And then NFL Network is breaking down Trey Smith, why he's in the 6th round, what happened, medicals, all of that stuff, and can this guy be a true 2nd round graded guard in the NFL? Like, those are the guys that's why I end up watching NFL Network on Saturdays.
Why does it feel like Trevor Lawrence has been in the league for 6 years already? It was Urban Meyer. That felt like about 4 years all in one.
That's probably what it is, just year 2.
And that year in Clemson felt like he was a pro already, I guess. It's been kind of the top of our consciousness.
Year
That's
2 went
strange.
to the divisional round.
Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty good. I mean, year 2 starting. So, I mean, year 2 starting for Patrick Mahomes, won a Super Bowl. Year 1 starting, went to the AFC Championship game. Could have won a Super Bowl that year. So, yeah.
What if Patrick Mahomes had to play 1 year under Urban Meyer just as a field leveling measure? Even right now, it's like, Pat, bad news, man. We're suspending Andy Reid for a year. No wrongdoing. We just think it's unfair. You get Urban.
The first year or just randomly in the middle of his career?
Just this year. The NFL sent out a press release at 5 o'clock today.
Then I think it would be one of those call your own.
It would be so funny. Yeah.
Mahomes would just call it. It'd be like Len Dawson.
I think it might be good for his legacy, actually.
Back in the day when the quarterbacks would call their own plays.
Yes.
That's what Patrick Mahomes would do. If it was year 1 of his career with Urban Meyer, I just can't imagine all of the things Urban Meyer would have tried to change about him.
It would have been, I hate even thinking about it. I know I sent us down this path, but now I hate it.
Did this.
And look, we know Mahomes is already doing his own scouting, running his own practices. I mean, he's prepped for anything.
That's exactly right. 913-912-4810. That's how the show lines up today. All the different things we will talk about. Again, Matt Derrick in the 11 o'clock hour. We'll talk with him and a lot of other Chiefs stuff. 913-912-4810 is the text line. We may sneak in some baseball today as well as the Royals will take on Shohei Ohtani tonight. So
that'll go well.
I'm pumped. I'm excited to watch it just because it's Shohei Ohtani. I will watch the game even if the Royals were 0-19. One, I'd be watching to see if they break the Orioles record of 20, 21 straight losses in a row. But Ohtani's on the mound, so I would be watching tonight. So, all right, 913-912-4810. Text already says, baseball? Why?
It's technically still happening.
Yes. Was it Dan Sorensen that Nate Bukaty asked the question about? Dan Sorensen. Why? Was it that one that he... Oh, who was it?
That sounds right.
I think it was. No. You know what it is? Linebacker from Iowa.
Ben Neiman?
Ben Neiman. That's
there
right.
You go. Ben Neiman.
Why? Why? Hunter Dozier. Why? Baseball.
Why?
Yeah, I agree. So we can get it. You know why? Ohtani. That's why. Because he is the price of admission. And tonight, it's, just on TV. What's that, lady?
Your watch loves Shohei Ohtani.
Okay. The price of admission updated.
Okay. What's it going to cost to
Didn't say anything.
Get out to L.A.?
It's the price of... That's a hefty penny. All right, let's get into the show. 913-912-4810. Daniel Jeremiah had his teleconference that he has every year. It's like an hour and a half that he had. So I want to hear from that and some other things even about Brett Veach. Let's play the Brett Veach Charles Omenihu, because we talked yesterday when we were discussing the takeaways from Brett Veach, and it was a lot about the draft, not much about the free agent signings. Jawan Taylor we discussed. That was the one that we sort of hit on. Everything else was just about like the draft. What he thinks of this, trading up, trading back, all of that stuff. Premium positions. Let's hear Brett Veach weigh in on Charles Omenihu and the signing for him, what he can do for the Chiefs, why they went that route. Here's Brett Veach weighing in on Omenihu.
Having our roster set up where we're losing some guys at the time, and we'll see some of these guys are still out there, but like Frank and Carlos and Colin, we were a little bit depleted there on the defensive line. So I think Charles was a guy that made a lot of sense for us. He can play a lot of base end on early rundowns, but I think the thing that really appealed to us was his inside pass rush ability. He's long, he's athletic, and again, we just feel like pairing him with Chris Jones inside on third downs is something that will be really beneficial for us.
So that was talked about yesterday, and we didn't get a chance really to get in and break that down because, we had a very important 1 o'clock hour, Sports or Leisure. All right. Also, text real quick says, Royals didn't lose last night. That's true. There you go.
Great point.
They have broken their streak of losing days. They broke their streak yesterday.
And in a way, we all won. I mean,
we did.
Think about it.
We all won. Certainly your sons did, so that's good.
Yes.
Right.
So proud of my sons.
Congrats.
My many sons.
Me too. I'm proud of my son as well. So a couple of takeaways from this. It's not a surprise because Omenihu did move around the defensive line in San Francisco, and they have a great defensive line coach, and the Chiefs have a great defensive line coach. And defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo likes to use guys in different ways, and Chris Jones can move around. We've seen Michael Dana line up inside, line up outside. We've seen Dunlap do that. So he likes that versatility in obvious passing situations on the third downs. One guy who the Chiefs are getting back that we haven't even talked about at all is Turk Wharton, who is a pass rushing defensive tackle. I bring that up because we talked about I think with Trevor Sickam, no, it was Brad Spielberger about Clancy from Pittsburgh, the defensive lineman that's the best pass rushing defensive lineman this year, but can he be a first or second down guy? Are you going to get him in the first round and hope that he can be a 3-down defensive tackle, but you're getting a guy who can really get after the passer, which is what you need ultimately. If you're looking at somebody in the first round, it's about passing, blocking for the passer, receiving the ball, guarding the guy who's receiving the ball, or getting after the passer. Like that's what the NFL is ultimately about. But with the Chiefs, I didn't think they would go that route anyway. Mm-hmm. But when they're already talking about like passing situations, this guy, we signed him because we can move him inside and we feel like we can pair him with Chris Jones on the inside. Then is that even more of an emphasis on looking at defensive end if you say, well, Omenihu's now going to be a defensive tackle on maybe like second and long and third down. So are you going with Karlaftis and Dana as your defensive end? So is your defensive line going to be Karlaftis, Jones, Omenihu, and Dana? Or, throwing out a name, you get FAU at pick number 31, and Karlaftis and FAU and Omenihu are kind of rotational guys there, can keep them fresh. And then on passing situations, you've got Karlaftis and Jones and Omenihu and FAU and Dana if anybody's, out for that series or whatever it might be, and Turk Wharton that's there, and you start to have some depth of getting after the quarterback. Does that make it more likely as opposed to they went and signed a defensive end? Like Khalil Mack is on the edge. You know who you got. It's opposite George Karlaftis. That's what they're going with. I think him specifically talking about Omenihu we can pair with Chris Jones. It's not just, we could do different things. No, it's, well, you can move around. And we feel good about pairing him with Chris Jones in the inside. I don't know if that's a peek behind the covers of what the Chiefs may be looking at in defensive on the defensive side in the draft. But I do think that presents, at least from that one comment, a little bit more of a higher degree of probability of them going defensive end maybe more than defensive tackle if you've got Noddy and you get Turk Wharton back and Omenahu's going to slide inside, and Dana's done that in obvious passing situations, and you hope with Patrick Mahomes there are a lot more obvious passing situations than just, hey, it's a 2nd down and 1. Am I reading too much into that, or is there something there with maybe an increased probability of defensive end over defensive tackle if specifically he spent half his time about Omenahu talking about him playing on the inside?
I definitely don't think you're looking too much into it for the immediate, right? Like for 2023,
Yeah.
I think that is a gold nugget there because we talked about that when they signed Omenahu, and it's kind of funny because I remember back when our friend Seth Kaiser did his film review on Omenahu, he said, hey, his actual biggest impacts are on the inside. But last night I tapped in for a little bit of the KC Lab podcast, Matt Lane, who was on with us yesterday. He made the point that, I think he may have even said something along these lines with us yesterday too, but he was very definitive saying, Omenahu's the best edge rusher on the team right now.
Yes.
I think both of those things can be true at the same time, and then it becomes about, this is a good spot to be, this is why versatility pays off in the NFL. It can be about getting your best 4 out there, period. Whoever your best 4 are. And Veach mentioning in there, Frank Clark and Carlos Dunlap makes me think that I've believed for this whole time they're eventually going to have a veteran edge that gets added a lot closer to training camp, into training camp, after training camp. If you're Carlos Dunlap, I've had enough training camps, thank you. We'll see what Andy Reid makes me show up. But in terms of the actual draft itself, I think it's interesting. I think the weight on the other side of the scale is that Noddy and Tershawn Wharton are both on 1-year deals.
Yeah.
Omenahu's on a 2-year deal, so they're not really super locked into anybody.
Yeah.
Mike Dana's probably in the last year of his rookie deal at this point, right? He's got to be. So regardless of what they see this year, I do think whoever gets drafted this year's got to have the long view as well. But I really like the idea of it being a rookie stepping in one rung after Karlaftis, with Omenahu having that ability to bounce around. Like you're starting to get this almost positionless defensive line that I just think could be an absolute blast. Whoever it ends up being, if it ends up being an edge, an interior guy, however they bolster it, what a fun group it's going to be.
I mean, it gets closer to the NASCAR package that we know Spagnuolo likes. Those athletic guys that can go inside, go outside, and you can find the mismatches at that point.
Yes.
So you can create the mismatch by putting Chris Jones on the outside and running whatever action you do, and all of a sudden he's locked up one-on-one with a backup right tackle on the biggest down of the game, and just beats him quick. I mean, just embarrassing. Like wind blowing by you and going and sacking Joe Burrow, and one of the biggest defensive plays of Chris Jones' entire career, and you get him out there and get the mismatch. And Joe Burrow, for whatever reason, maybe it was the center, whoever, did not shift the protection to where you would offer more against Chris Jones rather than a backup right tackle. But that's what happened. And having that versatility helps because you can slide Dana, and Dunlap was next to Chris Jones on that play, but playing the defensive tackle, playing the 3, and Chris Jones goes and whips his guy, and they get a sack, and they get off the field, and then Sky Moore gets the return, and then Jermaine Pratt did his Jermaine Pratt thing, and Butker made it, and Chiefs win, and they win the Super Bowl. But if you have these different guys that are there, I get more excited about that than let's say, first and second down, run stuffing, defensive tackle, where you hope they should be able to do enough against the run to set up where you can get after the passer more and have more obvious passing situations, and that's going to be part of the main game plan, is sacking the quarterback, getting off the field, and creating turnovers, because they need to create turnovers.
And it's funny because, and I think in a vacuum, and with and without the Omenahu comments, I think it's still more likely they go edge, and I hope they do, and I do think that this kind of pushes you in that direction a little bit. But it's so funny how thin of a line we're on between really genuinely worried about the depth of the group altogether and like having 2 starting caliber defensive ends, and also how close we are to being just really excited about how chaotic in a good way. The controlled chaos. That was an old, I think an old Giant sort of NASCAR package phrase. Definitely some of those old Ravens teams. Controlled chaos was the name of the game because chaos is bad for an offense. And if you can do that when they don't know where those 4 dudes are going to line up, it becomes really beautiful defensive football. Joe Cullen's been a help for that as well.
Let's play one more clip that I thought it was a great story and an interesting story how things kind of turn out, that one domino leading to another, but then also conversations leading to other conversations. We discussed it with the long reporting and story about Orlando Brown with the Bengals and how so many different things had to happen in a row for the Bengals to then feel like they could afford Orlando Brown, and that is Hunter Henry going somewhere else. It was Samaje Perine going somewhere else, and it was Orlando Brown reaching out to them. So all these things happening. Drue Tranquill, I think, is one of the more underrated signings of the offseason for the Chiefs, and will help out, to me, a lot, especially in passing situations. Here's Brett Veach weighing in on Drue Tranquill and how they ended up with the Chargers linebacker and the connection that was there from somebody else they were pursuing.
I don't know if we went into free agency saying linebacker was a super high priority. I think we probably focused on the O&D line predominantly. But then as free agency goes, there's always some guys that, for some reason or the other, are just out there and they're really good players. And we just picked up communication because Drue Tranquill actually has the same agent as Juju. So when we were trying to work through that Juju situation, once we congratulated Juju's crew and his team of agents, we were made aware that Drue Tranquill was still out there, and having had a lot of experience playing against him, knew how good he was, and a guy that can play all three positions. He can play Mike, he can wear the green dot and back up Bolton, he can play some well, and he can play some on the line scrimmage, great blitzer, great in pass coverage. That
Versatility there at the linebacker spot, but it's great. He's got the same agent as Juju Smith-Schuster, and I don't know what Drue Tranquill may do this year. I mean, he had an interception against Trevor Lawrence in the postseason in that game in which they lost. Maybe should have been better in the second half. I don't know. So I'm not sure what he's going to end up doing this year. But it's interesting that Drue Tranquill is on the Chiefs because the Chiefs signed Juju Smith-Schuster last year.
Yeah, right.
Isn't that kind of weird?
Yeah, butterfly effect. Incredible.
If they don't have Juju last year, then Drue Tranquill might be somewhere else, and maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe he's just a random depth player and just exchangeable with just change the name and go out there and perform the tasks that Steve Spagnuolo wants you to perform. But I just love all of those things sort of connecting, that because they were talking to Juju Smith-Schuster's agent about re-signing him, didn't work out, but then they were also hey, we've got Drue Tranquill. He's our agent, and he's out there still, and what do you think about him? Well, we weren't looking at linebacker, but let's look at linebacker now.
Do you think, the NFL just suspended 5 players? I'm going to hit you with these names real quick.
Yeah.
Because at least one of them here is a relevant one.
What did they get suspended for?
Ian Rappaport says, sources, NFL suspended 5 players, including Lions wide receiver Jameson Williams, for violations of NFL gambling policy.
Whoa.
Oh, boy. Lions C.J. Moore and Quintez Cephas, plus Commander Shaka Toney, are suspended indefinitely, at least 1 year.
Whoa.
Williams and Detroit's Stanley Berryhill are suspended 6 games. All right.
So
that
3 of the 5 are
quickly.
Lions wide receivers.
Yeah.
Because Berryhill's a wide receiver. Cephas is a wide receiver. We know Jameson Williams is a wide receiver. And then the other one is a defensive player.
Yeah, and then Shaka Toney. And
so you've got 4
Lions.
What's the Commanders' Shaka Toney connection to the 4 Lions players?
I don't.
That's interesting.
And I don't know if those will be connected. You have to think all the Lions ones are, though. I mean, that is a... What, guys? What's going on in your wide receiver room?
Wow.
I had a joke about, do you think Juju's agent just said, hey, could I interest you in Drew? And the Chiefs didn't hear it quite right. But then I got distracted by suspension news.
We'll take a break on this one. Tex says, having a pre-existing relationship with the GM worked out? That's weird. No. You want an agent that has no relationships with anybody. That's a positive. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. More Zone next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Here's the thing, Lions, okay? Leave it to us to play some wagers, okay? Leave it to us to play the DraftKings Sportsbook, okay? Don't you go about doing those things. We are the ones that'll talk about Celtics and Hawks and Nuggets and Wolves and Cavs and Knicks coming up tonight when we go to DraftKings and have a little fun with an official sports betting partner of the NBA, DraftKings Sportsbook. And you can get in on the excitement of every game with the touch of a button. New customers make a $5 pregame moneyline bet and score $150 in bonus bets if the team wins. Plus, everyone can score a no-sweat same-game parlay every day during the NBA playoffs. Open up the DraftKings Sportsbook app, opt in, place a same-game parlay on any NBA game. If it doesn't hit, you'll get a bonus bet back up to $10. So that's cool. I like the no sweat same game parlays, and you can go and check that out. New customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, sign up with code 810WHB. That's code 810WHB only at DraftKings Sportsbook.
Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 800-522-4700. 21 plus, physically present in Kansas. Bonus bets expired.
All right, if you're just joining us, there have been 5 players in the NFL that have been suspended for violating the league's rules on gambling. The star, the one that I think most everybody would have heard of, Jamison Williams, first-round draft pick a year ago, is suspended 6 games. There is another wide receiver for the Lions that's suspended 6 games, and then there are 3 of the remaining players that are suspended indefinitely, minimum a year. We went through this with Calvin Ridley, and not sure what the details are, but 4 Detroit Lions and 1 Washington Commander. And if you said, oh my goodness, there's a guy with the last name of Tony that has been suspended indefinitely at least a year for violating the league's rules on gambling. Luckily, it's somebody else with the last name of Tony. Spelled the same way.
Spelled the same.
T-O-N-E-Y. Didn't know there was another Tony out there.
Enough to scare me briefly when I opened the tweet.
If there's one more, you know what that would make?
It'd be Tony.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, so you do know. So,
I get some things.
yes, that's right.
Context clues.
913-912-4810 is the text line to be a part of the show, part of the conversation. So let's hear from Daniel Jeremiah. And he had his pre-draft teleconference yesterday, and instead of going on, like he goes on a lot of different shows, but there are so many other requests that he has that he just says, all right, here's a teleconference that we'll have.
It's a smart and baller move.
Yeah,
I can't talk to all of you, but all of you can talk to me.
That's right. Daniel Jeremiah will be a big part of the NFL Network's draft on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I thought this was pretty cool that, talking for an hour and a half, and he gets specifically asked about Adetomiwa Adebawore from Northwestern, but from North Kansas City High School, defensive end. That's probably going to be hopefully early day 2. If the Chiefs are interested, then hopefully middle day 2. Hopefully right around pick 63 if it's somebody that they are looking at. But Adetomiwa Adebawore was asked about to Daniel Jeremiah, and here he is weighing in on what he thinks about the Kansas City native Northwestern defensive end.
Yeah, he's a fascinating player. Coming out of the fall, I would say teams weren't, sky high on him, and they all knew he was going to test like crazy. So you had people saying, okay, well, I think he's more of a 3rd, 4th round player, but wait till you see him test. He's going to test like crazy. And then you talk to some of those same people after he works out and puts on a show, and they go, oh man, he's unbelievable. I think he's going to go in the 2nd round. And I said, well, wait a second. What's changed? You didn't necessarily love him on the tape. You knew he was going to blow it out. He blows it out, and now you're saying that he's moving up. So he's been a fascinating case study from that standpoint. But I like him. To me, I think, he's for me personally, he's going to be in my late 2nd round range as a player. But, the athleticism is off the charts, and the testing side of things, I think on the field, he shows you some of that inside-outside versatility, knows how to use his long arms to set the edge. I didn't think he was a real polished pass rusher. I didn't think he had a great game plan as a rusher. But, I think when you have the combination of explosiveness and length that he has, he's an intriguing guy. I just, I know some buzz about him going in the 1st round. That would be a little early for me.
He expects him to be a 2nd round pick, Adebawore. What's changed, and maybe a further, deeper dive from Daniel Jeremiah, who isn't just trying to get to the nuts and bolts of things when it comes to, this teleconference. What changed, I guess, would be his performance at the Senior Bowl when he was one of the bigger names of guys that was just, was talked about a lot when the practices were going on, that he was constantly, in the backfield against other tackles that are going to be drafted. And there was even a story about, it wasn't Daniel Jeremiah, it was somebody else when they were discussing it, and they said, he was actually doing and pulling off pass rush moves that weren't on tape. So it's like, okay, so what was he doing at Northwestern? Obviously, tape is king. It's what you talk about. It's what you discuss. It's what you look at. It's what they actually did on the field rather than just practicing. I can go out there and shoot, 33 pointers, but in a game with somebody guarding me and running at me, what am I doing then? Okay, so I can practice against these guys at the Senior Bowl and perform, But in a game, here's what I'm doing. And that's what Daniel Jeremiah was like. I don't know that he had a great plan in his pass rushing techniques. That is coachable, certainly. George Karlaftis talked about, developing that throughout the season of a plan and sort of setting up and understanding that one step here, one false step there is the difference between getting to the quarterback or not, and working on that throughout the year. That with the athleticism, the size combination, and the fact that he dominated the Senior Bowl, I think, had he not gone to the Senior Bowl or just was okay, then I think you're talking about a day 3 pick. But when he goes there and performs like that, and, that's against other guys that are going to be drafted, then, yeah, you start to go, all right, so what was going on at Northwestern as to why he ended up with, 7 sacks in his last 2 years, and why is he doing this here this week at the Senior Bowl?
And also, even when you do expect somebody to show up to the combine and have a great combine, these analysts, these scouts, these teams are still only human. And when you end up putting up the numbers, I've got the math bomb relative athletic score up for him, and it's just lit up in green, except for his height, which is the one knock against his measurables. But when you have an absolute freak athletic performance that way, I get it, because this is the way that it's happening for me right now, thinking about especially the end of the second round. I go, well, if Joe Cullen gets a couple of months to work with them, I could see him contributing early in the year. You get Spags and Cullen together, and maybe you do use him on the inside a little bit, where maybe that height would actually be kind of an advantage. You could use all that athleticism. He benched 27 reps. That was a little more than expected. You can go deep into the athleticism and then sell yourself on your own team's coaching. That, to me, is how a lot of these big jumps end up happening, and I totally get it. Because would you rather say high-ceiling, crazy athlete in our coaching staff, or a guy who doesn't need to be coached up as much but might not have quite as many tools in the bag? I do think also being able to have a good Senior Bowl experience that way is a really interesting one, especially if you are able to show things that weren't on tape before. I can't imagine that happens all that often. That's a really interesting element of it.
Yeah. 913-912-4810 is the text line to be a part of the show, part of the conversation. So, and he's a guy that would be able to move around to different places. So he can stop the run, he can rush the passer, what he did. So we'll see. Defensive tackle, defensive end, different things that he could maybe be looked at. So.
I've got a little more info on the gambling suspensions here from the Rappaport, saying on the major gambling suspensions this morning, those suspended at least a year were found to have gambled on NFL games. Those suspended 6 games placed bets on college games, but from their facility. Oh. Does that part matter if it's at their? Can you bet on college games from home?
Can you bet on any other sport besides the NFL as long as it's not at the facility? Because Calvin Ridley bet on NFL games.
This is from the NFL's release here.
Yeah.
The gambling policy, which is annually reviewed with all NFL personnel, including players, prohibits anyone in the NFL from engaging in any form of gambling in any club or league facility or venue, including the practice facility.
But does not allow them to place bets.
It
Obviously
says
not on the
specifically
NFL.
just there. Yeah, right. No, but just
well, then
in
why? That's just stupid.
facility.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Why would, if that's a specific rule, and you know that they've been paying attention to Calvin Ridley, and that's been a big deal. What are you doing placing a bet at the facility?
The NFL really loves this sentence. A league review uncovered no evidence indicating any inside information was used or that any game was compromised in any way. Thanks, NFL. I'm sure you guys would have known if it was.
And you would definitely tell us.
I'm sure they would have told you, and I'm sure you would have told us.
Yes. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back. Daniel Jeremiah weighed in on the Chiefs draft this year, what he expects, what he thinks they'll do, and talks about last year's Chiefs draft and just what that did to set them up to get to and win the Super Bowl, and then how it can impact this year. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. Matt Derrick comes up at 11 o'clock. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch.
We're spending a lot of time talking about measurables. The combine results, the size of these players, the athleticism. It's really important in the NFL draft. But you know where size is not important? With the size of the hail that hits your roof. I didn't know this until I talked to my friends at Shamrock Roofing and Construction, but it's true. When it comes to hail damaging your roof, the size does not matter, and we have seen some hail falling around these parts recently, and if you haven't checked out your roof since severe weather has arrived, then I'm guessing, looking at the forecast, it's going to be plenty more opportunities for severe weather to come and impact your home and hail hit your roof. When that happens, it's time to call Shamrock Roofing and Construction. Doesn't matter if it wasn't huge hail, not bowling ball size, that's great. Still going to damage your roof, and the people at Shamrock are the ones to ask to come and check it out for you. They got up on my roof for me a little while back. In fact, I got up there too. It was a nice experience. They showed me what they were looking for, and we also found out my roof was in pretty good shape. So if you don't need that work, they will let you know because they're there to give you the exact work that you need on your roof. The only thing you need to worry about with your roof is protection, and you put the rest of that in the hands of Shamrock Roofing and Construction. They have Kansas City's best. They're ready to draw up a play to put a roof over your head when you need it, and Shamrock offers you peace of mind with a protection plan that will keep your MVP safe for many seasons to come. When it comes to hail, size doesn't matter. Big or small, one call does it all. Call Shamrock Roofing at 913-850-6556 and visit them online at shamrockroofer.com.
At Rye Restaurants, we celebrate Midwestern recipes, traditions, and culture using local Kansas and Missouri flavors and farmers. Rye showcases those heritage dishes that the Midwest is known for, such as succulent smoked pork chops, aged steaks, baby back ribs, fried chicken, farm-fresh vegetables, Parker house rolls, seasonal pies, fruit cobblers, and ice cream sundaes, just to name a few. Rye has 2 locations in the metro, the original at Mission Farms in Leawood and Rye Plaza on the Country Club.
Matt Derrick at 11 o'clock. Ryan Tracy will be our guest coming up at noon. We will talk with Charlie Yook from the NFL Network at 1 o'clock, executive producer of the NFL Network, and has produced the NFL Draft the last 15 years. So fascinated by that. Hopefully what that conversation will be. In hearing about some of the behind the scenes and pulling the curtain back just a little bit. Daniel Jeremiah, let's hear him weigh in on the Chiefs draft from last year before getting his thoughts on picking 31, 63, and 95 in the first couple of days. Here's Daniel Jeremiah about the 2022 Chiefs draft.
I felt pretty great about their draft last year. Now, if you give me truth serum, I would not have predicted Isaiah Pacheco would have the role that he had on a Super Bowl winning team as a rookie. So that was the one exception. I thought he was a good player, but I did not know he would do that and turn into an unbelievable bargain there in the 7th round. But Trent McDuffie, I was a big fan of. Karlaftis, I was a big fan of. Sky Moore, I was a big fan of. Brian Cook, I liked. Leo Chenal. I mean, you go all the way down the list. Like they had a lot of resources. So when you have 1, 2, 3, 4 picks in the top 62, that's a good haul. And Brett Veach did a wonderful job of bringing guys in that were smart, athletic, and coachable. And I give their staff credit because sometimes it's not just your scouting staff being able to identify talent. It's your coaching staff being able to develop that talent. And I think the Chiefs coaching staff is one of the best teaching staffs in the NFL. And that was evident by the way they're able to get these young guys on the field early and get them up and running. And they just got better and better as the year went along. So I think they've laid out the blueprint for teams that have paid their quarterback. This is how you have to do it. You've got to go out there, get extra picks. You're not going to be able to pay everybody, but you need to hit on draft picks. So if you can get more of them, increase your odds. Those are the cheap starters you need to round out your team.
And that's what the Chiefs wanted to do. That was the strategy. That was the plan. But a plan and then executing that are two separate issues. And from all indications, from 1 year in the books and a Super Bowl ring and a Lombardi trophy out there at One Arrowhead Drive, they did just that. They executed that plan in getting cap flexibility, younger players, and hitting on some of those draft picks in the later rounds. And again, 4 picks in the top 60. If Sky Moore takes a step forward and Brian Cook is going to be utilized even more this year, I mean, it's Justin Reed, Mike Edwards, and Brian Cook, and Deion Bush they signed as well, or brought back. We know what Karlaftis and McDuffie did. There'd be 4 players in the top 60, 62 picks that you're saying you've got to capitalize on that because that's the flexibility you got when you traded Tyreek Hill. Those are the ones that you really need to, come away with some playmakers, some day one starters, first rounders, day one starters, second rounders, starters that can, produce and help out, or day two, I should say, second round, third round, and then 4th through 7th is can you find somebody that can add some depth and grow into a starter or get a steal and they're a starter and special teams, things like that. But your first, second, and third rounders should be guys that are playing roles on a team. And that's one of the bigger takeaways, obviously, from last year and what the Chiefs were able to do in executing that particular strategy. Let's hear how that relates now to the Chiefs this year. Daniel Jeremiah weighing in on, he was asked specifically, what do you think the Chiefs will do with their first 3 picks of the draft?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they traded back again. That wouldn't shock me. They're picking 31, 63, and 95 right now. But I also think that, playmakers is a way they could end up going. I know they've been doing a ton of work on wideouts. I know they've been looking at not only the top end guys, but some of those, 3rd round type players. So I would be very surprised if one of those 3 picks is not a receiver, just based off the work that they're doing, adding another guy into that mix. And I think you also probably look at grabbing a tackle at some point in time with one of these picks. So with that in mind, I would not be shocked at all. The way you describe what they did last year, having more shots at it. To me, trading back at 30 from 31, that would make sense to me. But if they did stick, I think you look at the wide receivers. I think you look at Quentin Johnston. I think you could also look there at Zay Flowers potentially if he was still in the mix. But I think they'll come out of those first 3 picks with a receiver and a tackle as 2 of those 3 spots.
It's interesting. They have brought in 4 players in workouts, or 3 plus Zay Flowers working out with Patrick Mahomes. But it doesn't count all the different people they may have talked to at the Combine. But that's the position that Daniel Jeremiah said I know they've been doing a lot of work on wide receivers. First round all the way through middle of the draft. And that seemed to be the position that if you're going to guess and pick one position out that they will take in the first 3 rounds that they will end up with, Daniel Jeremiah thinks that's going to be wide receiver. There, so.
Even if you're hesitant about a year 1 impact, do this every year. If it's a red shirt every year, do you know what Patrick Mahomes will always have? A couple wide receivers on rookie contracts. That sounds good to me.
Yeah. We'll talk with Matt Derrick about a lot of these things as last time we can talk to Matt. Well, I mean, I guess we could talk to him anytime and we can text him and call him. But on the air, we talked to him on Friday. So our last conversation on the air on a Friday before the Chiefs take their first-round draft pick. Talk some Chiefs football, some draft with Matt Derrick next.
Kansas City's official home of the NFL Draft. Sports Radio 810, WHB, Kansas City.
Robert Brogdon's Olathe Kia has no risk and all the reward with their 90-day money-back guarantee on every new Kia. Kickstart your spring with an incredible selection of new Kias like Sorrento, Seltos, and Soul. The new 2023 Tellurides and Carnivals are in stock at Brogdon. Visit OlatheKia.com.
We are Missouri Farm Bureau Insurance, and we're for home sweet home. We're for condos, tutors, single wides, and studios. We're for ranches, houseboats, 2 stories or 20. Red cedar, bluebirds, white squirrels, black walnuts, whatever's out your back door, we're for that. We're for watching the sun rise over the Mississippi and set over the Missouri. We're for kicking off your heels in a high-rise or hanging up your hat in the bootio. And if you have a home in Missouri, we have a policy for you.
I am Jeff Carr, your Missouri Farm Bureau agent, and if you're in Clay County, I've got you covered.
What makes for a great vacation? Depends on who you ask. Are you looking to get away or bring everyone together? Do you want to get outside and play or see a play at the plate? Fortunately, however you operate, I'm the destination you've been looking for. The name's Missouri, but you can call me Mo. And I have just one question. What's your MO? Come see me at visitmo.com.
Hey, Kansas City, it's Jeff Briggs with Victory Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, home of the Victory Effect, our pledge to drive down vehicle pricing for the city we love. Folks, let me ask you a few questions. Are you tired of the traditional way of purchasing vehicles? Are you looking for a truly transparent dealer?
Josh Briscoe, Drake. The Zone presented by Google Fiber. Award-winning internet without data caps, annual contracts, or hidden fees. And do want to remind everybody that we have the auction going on at 810WHB.com/auction. The Path to the Draft online auction. It is live right now. And you can help us support some of the local Kansas City charities, organizations in the Kansas City community, because all the money that we raise goes back into those benefiting in the Kansas City community. Local charities that we've worked with, the City Union Mission and Restoration House and Horizon Academy and Mission Southside, Third and Long Foundation, and many more great local charities that we have supported with some of the money that we raise with these online silent auctions. So 810WHB.com/auction to go and check out all of the different things that you can bid on and check that out. And some really, really cool pieces for the man cave, some cool experiences as well. So now through the end of the draft weekend that you can go and bid on that. 810WHB.com/auction. Let's talk with Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest, joining us here in the Zone on this Friday edition. Matt, what's up, man? How are you, sir?
I am hanging in there, Jason. Just limping along on a Friday, doing the best I can, but hanging in there. Wish I could see you there in person. It's been a while, but
we miss you. We miss you. We'll see you. We'll see you soon. Eventually, that's great. They were going to bring in some Joe's barbecue today, and we told them that Matt is not here. And next week, everybody's going to be out on a Friday. So they said, well, what about a couple of weeks from now? I said, you know what? I think Matt may be in a couple of weeks. Let's move the Joe's barbecue back to then. And they said, deal, done deal. That was the actual conversation that took place as far as you know.
See, that's why, I know that I'm your favorite. And because Briscoe, you know what Joshua would have done? Joshua would have called Joe's and said, hey, Matt's not here. Can you bring some barbecue out to us?
Exactly right.
I would have said, Matt's going to be here, and he's actually asking for 2 sandwiches, and then I would have just taken a couple home with me.
We'd take double. That would be great. So looking forward to having Joe's and a party when you're back in here.
I asked if they would just bring it in right at the end of Friday's draft festivities. It's going to be me and Marco. Just bring it up for the whole station, and Marco and I are going to have a party.
Because Josh is going to be hosting our Day 2 draft coverage on Friday night.
Day 2
next
pick,
week.
Day 2 host.
Well, I mean,
nothing wrong with that. No,
you can't get to number 1 without being number 2 first.
No problem being a good second or third round pick.
That's right. You know what? I've always thought of you as the Nick Bolton of 810.
I've always thought of myself as kind of a priority free agent. So, I mean, I really appreciate that.
I've viewed you as because you talk into a microphone, sort of the Breland Speaks of this station.
Not true, because I am occasionally on the ground.
That's right. All right, Matt, speaking of limping along, it's going to feel like this next week is going to limp along to get to the NFL draft here in Kansas City. Let's start with this. This is going to be pretty general and wide-ranging, and we can hone in on some of the answers here. But I'm just wondering, any takeaways from Brett Veach's 35-minute press conference yesterday in previewing the draft and an update as to where they are and roster and some of the free agent signings. So anything in particular you took away from Brett Veach, maybe different things, and then we can hone in on some of those specifically.
Yeah, there was a few different things. I mean, obviously hearing him talking about some of the receivers going down to work out with Mahomes in Texas during this year's draft was very interesting. I mean, that's something that it's a workaround, kind of the NFL rules a little bit, and it's an effective workaround. So, and once again, I mean, it's the kind of thing that the Chiefs are doing that you don't see a lot of other teams doing yet. And I got to figure that eventually the rest of the league is going to kind of catch up, and if it works with Mahomes and the Chiefs, are going to keep doing it. I thought probably the most informative to me as far as just the actual draft and what we should expect, I thought with him just directly addressing the question of staying pat at 31 or moving up or moving down. We joked about the fact that, he addressed the fact that, joking last year about, hey, can't trade that number 1 pick. And he made a differentiation that it's different, now that the draft is here. It's going to be different on draft night. That, he feels that there's a different energy, that it won't be a problem trading out of that number 1 pick if they have to, if they need to make the team better. And, and then not having that restriction is a good deal, because you never know how the draft is going to unfold. And that's one thing that Brett Veach has gotten very, very good at in his young career so far, is doing exactly that. I think there were times, that, especially in his 18 draft, that you could say he forced it a bit. That he made some picks that either he did for position or need or other factors, but maybe just forced it a little bit. And now his philosophy is you let the board fall to you. And that has done a very good job for them and sticking with it. So to me, yeah, if you're at 31 and there's not a guy that you're in love with and somebody wants it, do it. I don't think there's any reason you have to come out of Thursday night with a player just because draft's in Kansas City.
Is that somewhat to be expected, the 2018 draft, when you say, forced it a little bit, a GM's first draft on his own? It's one thing to be helping out John Dorsey and doing some scouting and preparing and obviously, loving Patrick Mahomes. But, he did other things besides just love Patrick Mahomes as a scout or as a prospect, I should say. So he was a part of those decisions in some way. But as you then take over that you're now the GM and the trade ups, the trade downs, the selections are now on your resume, not on John Dorsey's resume. It is your resume now. And is it somewhat to be expected that early on a GM, maybe the first draft into the second, and now this is what? Draft number 5, 6 for Brett Veach? 18, 19, 20, 21, 22? So draft number 6 for Brett Veach. So is it to be expected that his 5th draft was head and shoulders above his first draft?
I think absolutely. Experience is going to, make things better. And I still think that the 18 draft, even though I would say, hey, he had a full cycle to prepare for it, generally had, the same staff. You could say he was, dealing with Dorsey's staff that really didn't make a lot of changes. So it was his same crew, same people he'd been working with. But I think it was difficult for a couple of reasons. One is that because of the state of the roster, through no real actions of his own, he went into that draft where we all said, if you don't come away with an edge rusher early, you're a problem. Because the roster was set up that way. They had to come out of that draft with an early edge rusher, and then on top of that, you don't have a first round pick. So, he was put into a spot where he had to come out with an edge rusher at that second pick, no matter what. And that is just never a good formula for a draft. And, and after that, I think that, maybe it was because of Breland Speaks, or maybe it was, just because it is his first draft. What I would say is fairly safe, because remember, we were always talking about that with the character draft. Like everybody, a lot of guys that they picked were like all team captains and everything. And I think his draft philosophy has modified quite a bit since then. When you go into a draft, and I think there's a reason why, that he preaches about the idea of having a complete roster when you get to the draft, is he doesn't want to be where he was in 2018, where he's trapped into making a pick. And so I think those adversities, and the 2019 draft was an adversity too. I think that both those drafts were incredible learning lessons for Veach that has definitely paid off the last few years.
Yeah, and last year could set them up for years to come and what they were able to do and accomplish and get some of the value that they did at different parts of the draft, including a 4th round, a 7th round, a couple of 2nd round picks, and if they hit on those 2 first rounders, that's the main thing. Is if you can get some really quality, good players late in the draft, or in the first round, I should say. And you're able to find production and potential stars, that's what you got to do. 2nd rounder, find a starter that can produce. 3rd rounder, can you get some depth and rotational piece that could also eventually grow into a starter. And day 3, you get special teams, you get depth, and you get somebody that you hope you might have found a steal. And the Chiefs have done that a couple of times with Snead and with Trey Smith and with what seems like Jalen Watson and certainly Isaiah Pacheco. And I might be missing 1 or 2 other players that Brett Veach has drafted in that time. And that's sort of the big part about McDuffie and Karlaftis is, unlike the middle 2000s for the Chiefs when they kept throwing numbers at the defensive tackle spot because they kept missing, and let's draft a defensive tackle and miss, and let's draft a defensive tackle and miss, that when you start to nail these, it sets up so much more for the next year, because the Chiefs don't have to go in and go, well, Karlaftis sucked. And we find out that, that was a bad pick. So we've got to make up for it right now. And now you're saying we got to have a defensive end. Trent McDuffie, if he was just generic, Like, well, okay, you got a few generic cornerbacks that are there. What can you do moving forward? Because your first rounder, you moved up and you didn't get the value you wanted. Doing what they did and feeling like they came away with guys can allow you to go different directions. They don't come into this draft, Matt, and say, we got to get a cornerback. No, but if one's there at 31 and they're like, this guy shouldn't be there, then hell, take that cornerback, and now you can pair him up with McDuffie and Snead, and you've got even more depth, and you're better in that secondary.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that Brett Veach's philosophy has changed in some ways too. I got to sit with him with the Mothers Den at the Super Bowl in Arizona, and he addressed how they've had some success in the later rounds, and I don't know that this was necessarily his philosophy early on, because it certainly felt like with some picks early, like even a Khalil McKenzie in year back in 18, and Darwin Thompson next year. I mean, there was a few players that fit in that were like, okay, these are guys that we've circled. If they're there at certain points in the draft, we're picking them. And now, he describes it really as, talking about looking for pockets. And you look at, late in the draft, it's like, okay, which group of prospects, which position group is the strongest here? With the philosophy being that, hey, if you go where the strongest group is, and you've got 6 players in that group that you think could all be NFL players, and you take one of those guys, that's a better chance than if you're saying, you know what, there's one running back that we think can be a hit the 6th or 7th round, and you draft that one guy. No, I mean, because that might not be a 6th or 7th round guy. I mean, maybe it really should be. Maybe he should be a priority free agent. I mean, you kind of, again, are forcing yourself to pick somebody when, if you give yourself a pool of players and say, you know what, this is the strongest group. These guys are all good. We think they can all be good players. Now let's pick out the best of the best. That seems to be a very sound philosophy that's working for the Chiefs. And I think that to a degree it's also extended to other picks. I mean, McDuffie's and Karlaftis last year, great examples. I mean, those were not safe picks. Those were picks like, we're going for the players with the highest upside. We're willing to make a move to go get Trent McDuffie because we think that this guy is a top 15 guy that's fallen, and we're going to go get him. There was no safety about that. And I think even starting into the 2020, I think there was a little bit of, the Chiefs making some picks that were, looked good on paper or were the safe picks. And now I don't think it's about safety. It's about making smart decisions. And they just consistently have been making smart decisions the last few years.
The term you used and Brett Veach has used is pockets of players. Matt Derrick is our guest. And it's like in a fantasy football draft when you would have different tiers. Like, okay, here's tier 1 for wide receiver. Here's tier 2 for wide receiver. Here's tier 3 for wide receiver. So then you get into that tier 3, and there's like 7 or 8 different guys. And you're like, all right, it's my pick, and I would take any of these 6 guys because they're sort of the same. Let me go over here because this guy is the last one in this tier, and I can come back and get one of these 6 or 7 wide receivers. So the pockets, the different tiers, the things like that, and the way you can describe them. I think that we see bad teams stay bad and miss on some draft picks and things like that. And we talk about fit a lot, especially with quarterback. What's the fit? What's the team? What's the organization, the coaching? One of the advantages that the Chiefs have is Andy Reid is, one of, if not the best coach in the NFL. And the coaching staff is really good. And I think when you have those pockets of players, when you've got those tiered up players, Matt, this is not to take anything away from Jalen Watson or Joshua Williams or anything like that. But if you've got guys that meet an athletic profile who you draft that you think are smart football players, which they've emphasized that a lot, and you get them in with really good coaches that can work on the technique as long as they're coachable, can pick up the defense, that's the smart part of it, and the athletic traits are already there, so you don't have to teach him about being 6'2". He's already that. You don't have to teach him about turning and running and hitting a 4.34 or 4.4 on the outside and a 40-inch vertical because he's already got that. That you can coach him and put him in positions. And again, Matt, this is not to take anything away from Jalen Watson, but is Jalen Watson exchangeable for somebody else that was in that pocket if he was taken right before the Chiefs and they take another player? Is that player, Joe Smith, now the guy that we're talking about that had, such a good season because the Chiefs coached that person up with those traits, put him in position, and they succeeded, as opposed to, now Jalen Watson was going to be this guy no matter where he went, and if the Chiefs would have taken another cornerback, it wouldn't have worked out.
Yeah, and and I think you could say the same thing about the running back spot. That was a conversation last year that Brett Veach talked about the fact that he thought that there was going to be a 7th-round pick or a priority free agent that was going to be a 1,000-yard back in the NFL. And I don't think that when he said that, I don't think he was specifically saying Isaiah Pacheco is the guy.
Yeah, right.
I think he was saying there's a pocket of guys there that are going to be available late in the draft that are really, really good players. And, hey, late in the draft, they're going to take the one that they think is the best fit, the best match. It could very well, I mean, we might find out later. Maybe there's going to be 2 or 3 of those guys that do it. Or maybe any of those 6 guys would have been the 1,000-yard back in Kansas City in the Chiefs' offense. It is. It's all about those things. It's about making the right pick and the right fit. And I think you could absolutely, I think, make the case that, again, in the first couple of each draft, and I hate to keep harping on poor Breeland Speaks, but that's the poster child for it. That was the square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
I mean, and once again, it was that's not a position any GM wants to be, and for all of these reasons, it just ended up being a bad fit because not only was Breeland Speaks at maybe the bottom of a pocket or the top of the next one that you just got at the wrong spot. I mean, if Breeland Speaks was a 3rd-round pick, we wouldn't be picking on him as much. But you're forced into that decision. So you can't do that. And I think that even the pocket strategy, I look at this draft now. I mean, I think it's just because of hearing Brett talk about it for so long that I'm now sold on it too. And that's what I look at is I'm like, okay, hey, if you're going to take a guy in the 2nd round here, but you really want to address this position, well, you know what? It certainly looks like there's a pocket of receivers that would be great fits for the Chiefs maybe in the 4th and 5th round. So even though maybe you want a receiver, there's nobody right here that's going to fit what the Chiefs need. Pass on it.
Yep.
Even though this might be, a consensus might be this might be a better player, if it's not a good fit and you think there's guys later and there's a handful of them that will be, that's the way to go. Because if you bank on, once again, I think it goes back to the strategy we're talking about here. You bank on one player in an NFL draft becoming a hit, it's not going to work. But you give me 6 options, I got a much better chance of hitting on it.
Yeah, and it also depends on what the strength of that particular draft might be. The Chiefs are not necessarily in the market for cornerback. Well, this is a deeper cornerback draft. So, I mean, if the Chiefs were looking for a cornerback, then you'd say, you know what, do you have to take one in the 1st round? One might be there, but you can get probably a starter, a number 2 cornerback in day 2. Can you find somebody that can be a surprise in day 3 that you can coach up? Something like that. But they've got those, they got 3 guys last year along with L'Jarius Sneed. So not necessarily in the market for let's go and draft a cornerback. They might. I mean, they've got 10 picks. So one of those 10 picks being a cornerback wouldn't be a surprise at all, especially if they're sitting there in the 5th round going, this guy's a 3rd-round grade. He's still here. It's a cornerback. Let's go ahead and do it. Add some depth, make you better, all of that stuff. Visiting with Matt Derrick, Chiefs Digest, joining us here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. The first takeaway that you said you had about the Brett Veach press conference was the wide receivers working out down in Texas with Patrick Mahomes, and the latest one being Zay Flowers. So it's a little confusing. Adam Schefter tweets out that at the request of the team, Zay Flowers goes to Texas to work out with Patrick Mahomes. And then Brett Veach talking yesterday says, oh, that's just smart by the agent, getting in contact. That's the power of Patrick Mahomes, getting in contact with him and wanting to work out. And it's really cool for Zay Flowers and them to talk with Patrick to be able to set that whole thing up. Just really smart by the agent and the power of Patrick Mahomes, right? So sort of sounded like he was making sure people, at least publicly, like, we had nothing to do with this. We didn't send Zay Flowers down there. So, so 2 different sort of reports to a degree on that. Adam Schefter saying at the team's request, and Brett Veach saying, the agent reached out to Patrick Mahomes. That's great. Is this one of those sort of maybe, under the a cloak and dagger sort of hey, what if you got in touch with Patrick Mahomes and you went and worked out with him with Zay Flowers? What do you think about that? And then they do that, and it's like, well, the agent did that. This is not a top 30 visit, Matt. We didn't do this. We didn't set up Zay Flowers to go there. This should not count as a visit for us. His agent and Zay Flowers set that up on their own, and we can't control if they work out with Patrick Mahomes and who he works out with.
Yeah, it's a very fine rule, and I thought this, my radar went off at the same time I saw the Schefter tweet. I'm like, I know, well, I shouldn't say I know. I am going to make an assumption here, but I feel about 98% confident in my assumption. That language did not come from the Chiefs side of the equation.
Yes.
There's multiple sides in these conversations.
Yep.
And to make it short in this one, let's say that there's an agent side and a team side. Well, I'm willing to bet 98% Schefter's comment there came from the agent side because, yeah, the Chiefs were not going to use the word request. But, hey, you know what? Brett can be on the phone with Zay Flowers' agent and Quentin Johnston's agent and say, hey, you know what, Mahomes? Hey, Mahomes is working out down in Texas. You want to go meet him? That'd be pretty cool because I know he's, anybody who wants to come down there, he's working out with. So,
yeah, just in general.
Check into that. It'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, just in general for you, maybe work on some routes and things like that. You know, that'd be really cool for you. I mean, but just whatever you feel like doing. But just that'd be pretty neat. Just be cool experience for you. And Patrick would totally be open to it.
Exactly. I mean, and like I said, there's some fine rules in there, and there are some distinctions between a team working out a player outside their facility versus a top 30 visit. I mean, there's some really weird ones, but my understanding is that there's really nothing that covers this in the CBA or the agreement that if a player just on their voluntarily goes out and does this to stop them. Now maybe they're going to close that loophole at some point, but at the same time, I mean, it's like the Eagles quarterback sneak. If it's not illegal, keep doing it.
Yeah. I use air quotes when I hear voluntary. Just Zay Flowers just voluntary. It's like, what if I went and worked out with Patrick Mahomes? Especially when Adam Schefter said that Zay Flowers' workouts were done on Tuesday in Nashville with the Titans, and all of a sudden then he goes down to Texas to work out with Patrick. He wasn't just in the area, right? As McCole Hardman said a couple of years ago, he wasn't in the vicinity of Patrick Mahomes to be able to work out with him. He can't be on Pat ass all day. Zay Flowers wasn't in the vicinity of Patrick Mahomes. He was in Nashville, and he flew to Texas. That's sort of the fun with words and phrasing. And what do I believe? I believe the Chiefs were in contact with the agent and said, hey, it'd be a good idea if Zay Flowers went and worked out. That'd be cool. And then Brett Veach is saying, whoa, publicly, no. We didn't. This is not a workout. We did not tell him to do that. This was not a request. This was not us saying we want to work out Zay Flowers. Just the agent. It's a pretty good idea for him, and that's the power of Patrick Mahomes. So it's interesting. I'm expecting the Bills to come up with some sort of a proposal so that nobody can do this moving forward in the future. So that'd be great. Or
excellent usage of the McCole Hardman quote, by the way. I can't let that go. I mean, that's just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be on Pat ass all day. Can't do it. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back, and I want to get your draft crushes, Matt, if there are a couple of players that you're really liking. And Daniel Jeremiah said in the first hour, it was, if there's one position in these first three picks for the Chiefs, day one, day two, that he's confident they will come away with, or more confident than another, is wide receiver. We'll ask Matt Derrick if there's a position that he's more confident in than another, that if the Chiefs are taking those three picks on Thursday and Friday, that they will come away with at least one at this position. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, continue our conversation with Matt Derrick, Chiefs Digest. More next.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com.
Matt Derrick is our guest from Chiefs Digest. It is The Zone, presented by Google Fiber. Now up to 5 gigs. 1 gig internet, still the same price since 2012. It's awesome. Hey, this works really well. Cool. Now we're going to charge you more.
Not in this house.
Not up in here. No. I'm not paying a dime over what they paid in 2012.
Deal. What?
Okay. Not a dime. I'm not going to do it, okay? I'm going to hang up this phone if you're going to... Yeah, that's fine. 2012 price. I'm serious. I'm going to... Hold on. Have you already agreed to this? This is weird. I feel like I need to battle a little bit. I was. Can I give you my whole spiel? I was prepared.
That's
to
true.
really...
The one drawback for Google Fiber is you don't get any of those customer service just sort of feuds, you know,
Yeah.
that can really ruin your day. Google Fiber just refuses to give you that experience.
Ridiculous.
Sorry.
Yeah, ridiculous. I don't talk to Google Fiber on the phone and have to call them and then come away with some cool story to tell friends.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Hey,
like,
look at how I owned this company.
listen, honey, it's 45 minutes I've been on hold, okay?
If you want something to complain about, don't use Google Fiber. Sorry. That's just, I mean, They might not want me to say that, but Google Fiber is bad at getting you to complain about them because it always works and the
That's
customer
right.
service is great. Sorry, haters.
That's right. And if you want to complain about stuff, then don't listen to Matt Derrick because
Great point.
he's got everything you need. Matt Derrick, Chiefs Digest, is with us. All right, Matt, let's go through some draft crushes. Do you have 1 or 2 players that you're kind of honing in on that you'd really like to see the Chiefs draft, or just somebody you think is going to be pretty good in the NFL that is starting to become a draft crush for you?
Yeah, I don't have my radar pinging like it was last year.
Okay.
Last 2 years, because Briscoe will back me up on this one. 2 years ago, much to his dismay, I'll point out, I insisted that Nick Bolton was going to be taken by the Chiefs.
I mentioned this. I
Yes.
copped to this this week. I said, you said that. I laughed at you on the radio, and then they drafted Nick Bolton.
Yeah, we were talking, Matt, about the different visits that the Chiefs had over the last couple of years, and Nick Bolton being the virtual visit, and he's the only one from that overall number of visits the Chiefs had that they drafted. And then, Josh, credit to you.
I thought it was a joke. I legit thought it was a joke.
Said, no, Matt Derrick, he 2 years ago, he was pounding the table and saying Nick Bolton, they need to draft Nick Bolton, and they did. So,
And last year we were hanging out at KC Deck Supply, and like the last question we were talking about on Friday was, who you like tonight? And I said, I don't know if the Chiefs are going to take him. He's my favorite player left on the board.
Brian Cook, yeah. That was awesome. You said that, and they drafted it that night. I'm like, no way, Matt Derrick. He's so smart.
I'm 2 for 2. Well, actually, I'm only like 2 for 50. But,
But you got the 2.
It's small. It's where it's selective in points, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. You know what? There's a lot of people that I really liked. I really wanted the Chiefs to draft Willie Gay, and they did. I really wanted the Chiefs to draft George Karlaftis. I thought he was going to be a pretty good player, and they did. I really wanted the Chiefs to draft Gabriel Davis in day 3, and they did not. So, those things happen. I also really wanted the Chiefs to draft, oh my goodness, the cornerback that went to the Vikings that is not in the NFL anymore. Just a couple of years ago. Gladney.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I really like Gladney in this class. Nailed it, by the way. Nailed it. Not in the NFL. So thank God he didn't go that route. So you win some, you lose some. I wanted him to draft Patrick Mahomes, so I got that one right, and that's the only thing. That's the only thing that you have. You put that on your resume, you move on, and everything else is washed away by Patrick Mahomes. So, but you don't have a feel for this one. You don't really have that. Maybe not even a slow burn with a couple of players.
Well, I have a couple,
Okay.
and one's a second round guy because it seems like every time that I'm working on a mock draft or anything, I come across or I'm just watching stuff and things that pop out at me. Derek Hall from Auburn is one of those guys, and he probably shouldn't be because he's probably a little undersized for the Chiefs as far as an edge from what they really like. But as a second-round guys, and I really like FAU as well, who I'll help you handle the pronunciation for Felix's name because I still keep butchering it, which means the Chiefs will take him, and I will have to learn how to pronounce and spell it. But those 2 guys in the second round, I mean, I think they'd be awesome second-round guys. Like I said, Hall's probably a little undersized for the Chiefs, but he just always pops out to me. The guy that I'm most enamored with, however, is like a 7th-round pick or a priority free agent. It's Shaq Davis, the receiver from South Carolina State. I mean,
interesting. Okay.
I mean,
Love it.
call him he's Baby Megatron, and he's not really baby because he's like 6'4". He's huge. Been incredibly productive. I mean, he had like 900 yards receiving the last couple of years. Each year, I think he had 20 touchdowns. He had like 21 drops too. Let's not focus on that. Let's just focus on the big plays. But no, I mean that's once again. I mean, you can't teach height, you can't teach speed, you can't teach a lot of things. You can teach a guy how to catch a football, and he made also a lot of difficult catches too. So if the Chiefs end up getting Shaq Davis on as a 7th round or an undrafted or priority free agent, I will once again that's the guy that I'm going to be putting my hat on. Don't know why, but this year it's a 7th round draft pick that I'm most enamored with.
Well, also, you talked about, there's some drafts, but don't focus on that, or some drops, but don't focus on that. Well, if the drops weren't there, he wouldn't be available in the 7th round, right? I mean,
that's why he's there in the 7th round.
That's right.
That's
so,
exactly
you're going to teach some guys some different things. Let me ask you this: as the Daniel Jeremiah weighed in. We played the clip in the first hour as a teleconference that he had yesterday, about an hour and a half long, and he was asked specifically about the Chiefs at pick 31, 63, 95. What they come away with, what have they been doing, and he said they have put in a lot of work and a lot of attention with wide receivers in this draft. Whether those are official visits, but they have done a lot of work on wide receivers. And he mentioned offensive line, defensive line, things like that. But his prediction was, if there's one position that the Chiefs will have of those 3 picks, trade up, trade down, whatever it might be, but they draft 31, 63, 95. He's most confident that wide receiver will be one of them. Do you have a position that you would be most confident that the Chiefs would have one guy from that position when we wake up on Saturday morning?
I think wide receiver is a good pick. I think my pick is going to be offensive tackle, and the reason for it is that I think there's a lot of depth in this receiver group. And once again, we get back to the pockets, I think there's some really stronger pockets later. If the Chiefs are in a spot where the guy that they really like, and there is a divergence of opinions on first-round receivers.
Yeah.
There's some people who think there's only one. And then they argue over who the one is. Then there's, maybe up to 4, but there's just a cross of opinions on the receivers, and that's a need for the Chiefs. But again, I mean, I feel like there's pockets later on. Tackle just still feels like the one need that this team has. And I mean, even though Veach went over yesterday, they got a lot of options, for what they can do. But right now, I mean, they haven't penciled in exactly who is their starter at left tackle and right tackle right now. I mean, it's still up in the air. I mean, and Brett Veach even made it with the signing of Jawan Taylor. He's like, the great thing is that if we draft a tackle, he can start on the right side. I mean, he's even telling, that's the one thing he's telling us, is that tackle is on the board. So maybe it's a lot of smoke, but I feel like you look at the Chiefs roster where they are, the one thing that they could absolutely use, plug and play, is an offensive tackle, whether it's left or right. And they can go either way. Once again, you go back to flexibility and not pigeonholing yourself in. That's why the Jawan Taylor signing is so Brett Veach, is that it keeps his options open and doesn't force him into anything. And technically, he doesn't have to. I mean, like we said, they've got options. But if you could see yourself plugging in a first-round or left tackle or a first or second-round right tackle, those are usually guys that you can start immediately. So I think that's the position of biggest need, and I think there's options at both those spots that they could go on the first 2 nights.
The when you say like their starters, I think right now they would, if they played a football game right now, they would know their starters are Taylor on the left side, Niang at right tackle. But to his point, like, well, nothing's been decided because they don't play until September. They've got training camp and the draft's still yet to come. And if there's a surprise cut, or if there's a trade that becomes available or something like that, they'll exhaust all avenues and kick the tires on all those different things. So yeah, when game number 1 happens on that Thursday night, then we'll see who's starting at tackle. But it sounds like you'd be more in favor of, if the Chiefs take a position in the first round, you'd be more inclined to prefer tackle as opposed to defensive end, defensive tackle. swing, defensive lineman, just tweener, just could play either one, could move around, versatility, or wide receiver?
I think that, to me, I would group defensive line all together because I think tackle and edge are equal needs to a degree. I mean, they're a little bit different needs, but they're kind of equal as far as just, I think percentage of needs that you have there. Receiver, I mean, is a numbers need too, but it's also an impact need. And we can get back to, I think it's really hard to find an impact receiver for a Chiefs offense as a rookie. But I think all those you mentioned, I think, are right there. To me, it's just about what makes sense, what's the availability. I mean, you could make an absolute argument that, maybe the fifth or sixth best tackle in this draft is better than the second wide receiver in this draft. And that's what makes it more likely to me. But I agree with Daniel Jeremiah. I mean, we have a lot of evidence that the Chiefs have put a lot of resources into receivers, both at the top of the draft and other rounds too. So they have kicked the tires on these guys. And now, is that because Brett Veach wants to see if these guys really are top 15 players and somebody he needs to go get? Or is it somebody that, hey, even if they're available at 31, like you said yesterday, you bring these guys in for a visit, and they could go from on your board to off it to off your board to on it. We'll see what they learn, but they're definitely, with the receivers that are going to be available in their range, and I would say their range being obviously from like 21 to early second if they want to maneuver the board a little bit. They've obviously invested some time there, but they've done it with the other positions too. I mean, that's why I think they've masked it pretty well about which direction they're going, because they've kind of covered their bases.
Yeah, and that was one of the other things that he pointed out was, they'd done a lot of work on wide receivers, but all throughout the draft, like all rounds, like not just – they've done a ton of work on Jackson Smith and Jigba and Quentin Johnson and Zay Flowers and Josh Downs and Jordan Addison and Hyatt. No, it's like they've done tons of work on receivers that would range the entire draft. Day 1, day 2, day 3. So I would be pretty shocked if they did not come away with a wide receiver in this draft. I'd be pretty surprised if they didn't come away with a wide receiver on Thursday or Friday. And I think if they come away with a wide receiver on Thursday, I'd actually guess that they would have to move up to do that. I don't know who's going to be there at 31. Quentin Johnston seems to be falling, and that was somebody that was like, he's going to be a top 10 pick, but I don't know if that's somebody the Chiefs are going to just say, he's there at 31, let's sprint to get up to the to turn the card in to give that to Roger Goodell so we can draft this person. I would guess they're going to end up with a wide receiver in some way, shape, or form. And there are a number of guys that they can go with, but the guys that they have worked out and talked with, and this is, to me, it's just like, not trying to pigeonhole yourself into one particular thing. It's been slot. They've been guys that have been smaller. They've been guys that have been bigger. It's just, different ways to fill out the wide receiver room. And whereas it feels like Spags has a certain level of you have to meet this threshold for Spags to want you on his defensive line. I think wide receiver for the Chiefs is just simply, can you play the different ways they can use them? I don't think they go into this draft saying we need a guy who's 6'2" or taller to play the X because we've got these other guys that maybe aren't as big. I think they'll find a way to put guys in there and utilize them. And if somebody's not 6'2", that's fine. If they're 5'10", but they make plays and they can help out for Travis Kelce and Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore and MVS, then hell yeah, draft them and put him in there. And you've got him for the next 4/5 years, depending on who you get.
Yeah, and if you even look at some of the players that we've seen that the Chiefs have, reportedly had in for some of their top 30 visits, I mean, you're right. I mean, they vary. I mean, if you're drafting a Quentin Johnston or, you're drafting a Zay Flowers, working out with Mahomes, I mean, that's the kind of guy that borderline first, second. I mean, at least it's in the Deshaun Jackson category of this is a guy that if you're drafting him that high, you're hoping that they're going to come in and make an impact year one. Now, is it going to be a 1,000-yard guy? Not guaranteed, but you're hoping that's going to be somebody who's going to come in and give you 600 to 800 yards. You're not drafting a guy in the first round if you think he can come in and give you 250 in year one. I mean, that's just the difference between a first-round pick and Sky Moore. That's not knocking Sky Moore. That's just an acknowledgement that, jumping from that level of football to the Chiefs' offense is a huge leap. It's not easy for anybody. But then again, look at a guy like Rashee Rice from SMU. I mean, if they take Rice, that's to me, it's more of a development pick. That's somebody that you're thinking, okay, this guy can do a few things for us in year one, but we're really banking on years 2, 3, and 4 that they'll contribute. That was kind of the Sky Moore philosophy. Sky Moore, hey, can contribute year one, but we're really banking this guy's going to be better down the road. There's different routes there, and that's the other thing with the top 30 visits for the Chiefs. I mean, they use a lot of them just to answer questions that they've got. So you see a lot of guys who are either injured or later round guys. It's not about just bringing in the 30 best players. Top 30 is a huge misnomer.
Yeah.
It's really just about answering your 30 biggest questions.
Yeah, and I'd be fine if Rashee Rice is a player that they end up drafting. I wouldn't want him at 31, but if you get him at 63, and even if they have to, if they feel like there's a need that they have to move up and grab him, because if we're talking about there isn't somebody that you want to put specifically in some sort of a box of they have to meet these particular markers in terms of size, but he is a guy that is a bigger receiver, and unlike Quentin Johnston, Rashee Rice uses his size and can play bully ball and can block as well, which they like to see. And he makes a lot of contested catches. Downside of that, Matt, is sometimes when you're making contested catches, it's because you're not open, or you didn't gain separation, or the route wasn't as good as it should have been. And that's one of the things that he struggles in. He's very inconsistent, but I think he's a guy that has a number of traits and has shown enough on film and has shown enough flashes of high-level play that if he gets in with the Chiefs and starts to refine his route running and things like that, you could have a pretty damn good player that's your prototypical X-receiver that goes out there and makes a lot of big-time catches. I think there's a lot of upside with Rashee Rice if you get him in like the second round or something like that if he's there at 63. I like Mingo if he's there at 63. Cedric Tillman I like in the second round. That's sort of the level. Because one of the things, Matt, and we'll take a break, is it seems to be with wide receiver, there's only a few of them that stick out in terms of the size, because this receiver class seems to be littered with guys that are smaller, and then you've got a few guys that are like trees, and in other classes they wouldn't be viewed as like trees. They would be like, oh, he's a little bit taller. Here it's like, okay, this is Shaq, and the other guys are like, Penny Hardaway. It's like, it's odd.
Yeah, and I'll give a promo here to my favorite draft guide. I think Dane Brugler does absolutely incredible work at The Athletic, and
the Beast.
His Beast, the Beast is to me the Bible for the NFL draft. But I only have one huge quibble with him this year, and that is Ronnie Bell is on the board. I mean, I'm probably taking him in the 4th because I like the guy that much. He's got him in the 7th.
Oh, really?
If the Chiefs let him go to the 5th. I would jump on him the 5th so hard. I mean, to me, and that's once again. I mean, it's a guy that hey, is he a perfect receiver? No, and he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's not the fastest guy in the world. But to me, and this is a huge compliment because I love Albert Wilson. He's the Rolls Royce of Albert Wilson.
That's interesting.
He's a physical guy. You can see him doing a lot of different stuff. I mean, he makes a lot of tough contested catches, and he's a local guy too. So, yeah, I think that would be a guy that if 4th or 5th round for me, if I'm the Chiefs, I'm jumping all over it.
I'm imagining Ronnie Bell in a Chiefs uniform, and the pocket breaks down, and Mahomes gets outside the pocket, and that seems to be where Ronnie Bell is really good at almost like creating with the quarterback a little bit, like off script. He's really, really good at that, and then certainly the ball in his hands. So sign me up. If they get Ronnie Bell in the 4th round, I'll settle out of court right now for Ronnie Bell in the 4th round. So let's take a timeout. We'll settle out of court for a few commercials, and then we'll talk with Matt Derrick. We'll get his prediction Thursday night. This is the position they will draft and the name, and we will hold him to it. It's his only prediction he can make. We'll do that next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
The draft is just about here, and if you're looking to enhance your experience, Tickets for Less can help. The New Heights podcast will be live on Wednesday night at the Music Hall, and the Kelsey Jam Music Festival kicks off Friday night at Azura Amphitheater. Ticketsforless.com is your source for the best selection of tickets with no fees. Plus, you can save big when you enter promo code 810 at Tickets for Less. That's promo code 810. It's the 3 digits. You know them. Take advantage of big savings around the draft and get tickets now with code 810 at ticketsforless.com.
Hey, Kansas City, it's Jeff Briggs with Victory.
Titans.com.
All right, Matt Derrick, Chiefs Digest. Position and name. Oh, you know what? We can also throw in there. They can trade up, trade down, pick at 31, position and name, Matt. And I'm writing it at ink. Actually, I'm just going to pierce my finger.
Yeah, I'm
going
to tattoo this on my forearm.
Yep, so there we go. What do you think?
Okay, if the Chiefs trade up, they're trading up for Broderick Jones, who has fallen and slipped down the draft board.
I like this already.
If they stand pat at 31, I'm going to go with Zay Flowers.
Okay.
On the offhand chance that he does fall to there. And if they trade out of that spot and trade back, I'm going to go with Darnell Washington, tight end, Georgia.
Ooh, wow.
Ooh.
Okay.
Tight end, I think, is the sleeper for this.
Okay.
I mean, there's some really interesting names into the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round.
Can we play the percentage game, Matt, super quick, of what the chances are that they go up, down, or stay?
I'm going to say move up 24%, stay like 64%, so I think that's going to give me like 12% move down.
Nice math.
I love
done.
percentages.
Well done. So if they trade down, they get the Hulk of a man in Darnell Washington, the guy who's compared to other players in this draft, his receivers or tight end is kind of like Shaq, 6'7", 270.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We'll see. We'll see what they end up with. So Broderick Jones, Zay Flowers, Darnell Washington, some names to think about and look at. Matt, can't wait for our conversation next week. We'll be talking about who they selected. Appreciate it, brother.
Can't wait. Take care,
Absolutely.
guys.
There's Matt Derrick. We'll talk with Ryan Chasey next.
Kansas City's official home of the NFL Draft. Sports Radio 810, WHB, Kansas City.
NBA playoffs means big hoops action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Get in on the excitement of every game with the touch of a button. New customers can make a $5 pregame moneyline bet and score $150 in bonus bets if their team wins. Plus, everyone can score a no-sweat same-game parlay every day during the NBA playoffs. Open the DraftKings Sportsbook app, opt in, and place a same-game parlay on any NBA game. If it doesn't hit, you'll get a bonus bet back up to $10. New customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up with code 810WHB. That's code 810WHB, only at DraftKings Sportsbook.
Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 800-522-40...
WHB, Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe, Drake. We will talk with Charlie Uke coming up at 1 o'clock, NFL Network executive producer. He has produced the NFL Draft on NFL Network for the last 15 years. So the explosion of this made-for-TV event that is now the Traveling Roadshow with the NFL Draft, the Combine that he produces as well, that became a primetime made-for-TV event with the workouts moving from morning and afternoon to at night. So we'll talk with him about some of the things that can be expected here in Kansas City with the NFL Draft, but also some of the behind the scenes of when you're watching the NFL Draft, which I'm kind of a dork with anyway. So let's get into some more dork stuff with the draft, which we all love and embrace. Ryan Tracy is our guest here. RGR Football on YouTube. You can check him out with the Locked On Chiefs podcast. Rogue Analytics, you may know him from that as well with the NFL Draft Guide. You can go to rogueapc.com. And about 15 other places to find Ryan. Did I at least get 4 of the 25 places?
You got all the big ones. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Great. You know what? I was just trying to knock out the bigger ones. As the show goes on and our interview goes on, I'll keep throwing in different places where else they can find you too, just randomly. Burger King on Saturdays. Ryan Tracy's there. You can see him and talk some draft.
You never
with him.
know.
You see him and talk some. Also Twitter at Ryan Tracy NFL. So I should have saved that one for later. Damn it. Let's start with this. Brett Veach had his press conference yesterday, and he talked about Omenihu. He talked about Richie James, Drew Tranquill. They signed Justin Watson. The free agency period for the Chiefs and Brett Veach. In your mind, what has that done for them in this draft? Does it mean that they really can go in a number of different directions in the first and second and third round, depending on board, because of some of those smaller moves and bigger moves with Jawaan Taylor that they had in free agency setting up before this draft?
Well, now you got me hungry for cheeseburgers, so I'll put it this way.
I apologize.
What they've done in free agency has set the table. Everything's there that they're going to need. They just got to get to the main course of actually adding things to their plate. And I do agree. It does let them be multiple and go in a number of directions based on how this first round in particular, but really how the bulk of the draft falls all the way down into day 3, because there's certainly areas of strength. The Chiefs have some needs at several of them, but there's also other directions they go. I also find it really particularly interesting that he mentioned that the linebacker depth is there on day 3 late. So I think that's probably a bit of a clue, wink, wink, from Brett Veach.
Yeah, it's interesting because they go and sign Drew Tranquill, and they've drafted 3 linebackers in the second and third rounds over the last few years with Chanel, Gay, and Bolton, and then Tranquill. It feels like they're pretty good at that spot with those 4 players, but doesn't mean that if somebody's available there that they would go, nah, let's back off from that, because also, there's special teams. There's elements there that they can use different guys and injury and depth and all of that stuff. So it is one thing that is of interest, and this is, a complete aside, Ryan, that the attacking the linebacker and getting better and cheaper at linebacker has been one of the things that Brett Veach has done in the draft over the last few years, and going from Hitchens and Wilson to Gay and Bolton, and now Tranquill, who's a very affordable pick, and Chanel, a third rounder, and if they draft somebody else in day 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those ways. In the old days, you used to build defenses from the middle, from the linebacker position, because you could help them out a little bit in drop back coverage. You could help them out a little bit in rushing the passer, doing some of the things from the middle ground. These days, especially with Spags playing so much 3 safety dime, you still want to make sure that even when you go into that penny look with 4 defensive linemen and a single linebacker, that you're able to cover area, not just between the hashes, but all the way out to the numbers. And so even though they do have a nice crew of linebackers here, you're always looking to get a little bit more athleticism there. And nickel linebackers are now becoming just overgrown safeties. Guys that 10, 15 years ago would have been listed as a safety are now running around from an in-the-box alignment trying to cover all the way out to the sidelines, or maybe even cross-drop into some of the high zones. There's a lot you can do if you have the athleticism at that spot.
Visiting with Ryan Tracy, Athletic Matrix. You may know him from that as well, and many other things. So let's get into the draft, Ryan. The overall draft this year, is it a good draft? Is it deeper? Is this one to where, GMs will have a lower quantity of first-round grades on different players? How do you view this draft overall as we get ready for this next week?
In terms of the top 100, my board's a little bit lighter than the last 3 or 4 years. There certainly is a nice early day 3 run at a ton of positions, all the offensive line positions, both the defensive line positions. You have linebackers there. You have a ton of cornerbacks, which obviously the Chiefs have built out their corner crew. But I definitely, because of the depth of that position in this draft, I won't rule that out, especially because they won't have to sacrifice a top 100 for it. So I do like that. Overall, I don't think the top of this draft is elite past the last, say, 4 or 5 classes, except for obviously a pretty big bounce back in the quarterback ranks from the last class to now. Not that the Chiefs are going to care, other than the fact that it allows a few more other positions to fall to them.
If there's fewer players that may be elite, and maybe that means there's 9, not necessarily 21 where the Chiefs were, moved up to get Trent McDuffie last year because the Chiefs had a first-round grade on him and they didn't think he was going to be there. So, you know what, this guy's there, let's move up and get him, because none of our mock drafts and all of these other things we practiced had him sitting there. If you're talking about maybe not as high end of the players, at the top, would that make it in your mind more advantageous to trade up to grab one of those guys if there's a more of a significant drop off, or trade down because if there are a few of those guys, they may not be able to trade up high enough to grab one of those? And then if there's just a jumbled mix in the middle of a lot of guys from 15 to 60, then it might be best to go and pick up maybe an extra third or fourth rounder if you're grabbing from a larger swath of players that sort of are in the same range.
With fewer elite prospects, I do think the cost to move up is going to be a little bit steeper than on average. But I will say this, too. There's a significant advantage to being the Super Bowl champion at this point, because you have most likely at least 2 or 3 more draft slots this year than you can likely squeeze onto the 53-man roster. So jettisoning some of those as draft capital, I think, allows you to be really, for the first time, trading up significantly, maybe not as much as you did for Patrick Mahomes himself, but another maneuver like the Trent McDuffie trade, I think, is certainly within the realm of possibility. And even a little bit farther, they could get into the teams if they really feel there's an opportunity to get someone that they have highly graded. Even if other teams do, I think this is the year where they have the ammunition to do it.
It's interesting. If they do that, is there a position or a player you would like to see them go up and attack? Is it, grabbing maybe somebody that can play left tackle and now you can have Jawan Taylor at right tackle, or somebody to play right tackle that could grow into left tackle, or wide receiver, an edge or something like that? If they're moving up maybe into the teens or something like that, is there a particular position or player that you're like, go get this guy if you can?
I think the trenches are more elite in the first round than they are later, while they both have depth at both offensive tackle and at edge. I do think if you want a true blue-chip prospect, it is worth going up to get them. Whereas I see guys that are, could fit in the Chiefs' offense at the wide receiver position, particularly a couple of guys in Quentin Johnson and Zay Flowers, who they both had in for visits. I think they're both guys that are going to be borderline down at the bottom third, maybe even available at 31. So that would be like a last-minute move up that you didn't have to put that much capital behind. But I do think for players like Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones, Darnell Wright at the tackle spot, Tyree Wilson, I don't see as a top 10. I think he could go mid, maybe late teens. And then I think Myles Murphy and Nolan Smith are going to be a little bit above where the Chiefs are. I think all of those players at edge and tackle are worth investigating whether, if you like them enough, that you go up and pull the trigger.
Well, I mean, if Patrick Mahomes has his way, wouldn't he make them go up and get Tyree Wilson? Patrick, who should we draft? Tyree Wilson, do it. Go get him. Or, maybe it's wide receiver that he wants to tackle. But, damn it, Brett, you can take Tyree Wilson. Go get him, all right? Or I quit.
I don't know. I think that might be looking for a guy on his side of the ball, but you never know.
True.
That helmet needs to get drafted too.
Yeah, if Tyree Wilson was the tackle prospect that he is edge prospect, that might be the one where he's like, no, get the Texas Tech guy, damn it, go get that guy. It feels like, Ryan Trace is our guest. It feels like the level of area they trade up to might be an indication of who they're going after. Like if they're trading up into the teens, you would say that's going to be a tackle or an edge. If they're trading into the low 20s, mid 20s, high 20s, whatever, it'd be maybe one of those wide receivers that's there.
Yeah, that feels about right. I would say the other dark horse spot might be defensive line interior, like a Lucas Van Ness or something like that, if you feel that you can get there. I think we all have to keep our head on a swivel just in general for any of the Georgia defensive front players. If Jalen Carter were to fall out of the top 10, I think Joe Cullen might be chewing Brett Veach's arm off.
Well, you might do that anyway, just because that feels like what Joe Cullen might be. I'm not sure. It's interesting. You mentioned Lucas Van Ness as maybe an interior defensive lineman. I've seen a lot of different places where he's viewed as an edge, and then some he's viewed as, interior defensive line. Is he a tweener guy for you that can play both, or to you he's a defensive tackle? Maybe some others might view him as a defensive end. It's sort of the is he kind of this guy can play tackle but would be awesome at guard. This guy can do this. Like if we talk about the offensive line, is that Lucas Van Ness? But why do you see him as an interior defensive lineman?
He's definitely a tweener. The question is, it's all projection, and it's in the eye of the beholder, and especially how teams feel that they can adapt their system, especially if they're a four-man front and you're expecting to be in a 7 technique or outside the tackle even wider. I think that's more of a question because of the bend that I don't think is quite there with Lucas. But if you're somebody like Joe Cullen who wants to play either, if he got his way, three-man front with a head-up 5 technique, or somebody that can come in and bash guards around, Lucas Van Ness's best attribute is his hip extension power and his leverage. He can bull rush anybody, and it doesn't matter if it's coming from an inside lineman, an outside lineman, anywhere around the B-gas, I think, is where he can live and make his most damage. So that's just my preference for him. I think some team might pull the trigger on him as an outside edge, but I think in the end, he can do a bit of both, and I just like him better inside.
Yeah. Visiting with Ryan Tracy. The athletic matrix, let's talk about that a little bit because it's fascinating to see all the different scores and where guys match up. What's the correlation do you find in some of the guys that can grade off the charts, but maybe the production wasn't there in college? If everything's going to be, it's going to be an individual case by case, but in general, do you find the guys that maybe have the higher athletic, scores, but maybe not as productive in college, do they succeed at a higher rate, or the guys that maybe don't have the higher athletic score, but were just simply productive in college and they just got the job done?
In the end, instincts come out to it a lot, and I think what the athletic matrix does, it's an algorithmic look at functional athleticism. So it really puts functional groups together of how different position groups have to perform their jobs. So what it weeds out is people that score really high, a prospect on one particular attribute. It raises the floor on your evaluation, and then you tie that to the production, and you can see why a guy's instincts maybe on the field take over. Whereas if you have a singular type strength or trait in the physical world, maybe that doesn't translate in a given system. Maybe it isn't an opportunity at the pro level that the college level was. I think rather than revealing the ceiling for a prospect, it really reveals the floor. And what can you expect from him in any system, particularly if you adapt to him once he gets there? I've spent 20 years refining this methodology. Yeah. In the end, it's predictive all the way down, usually into UDFAs, unless they're just a really, really speed-oriented player who doesn't have the experience. That's the trump card where maybe you might get a false positive because the athletic traits are dependent on being translated by a coaching staff.
Yeah, and it's the one of the things that I've talked about with this Chiefs coaching staff, that I think there's an advantage there, that I think they're pretty good at coaching some players up. That, you take some guys that have some physical traits. L'Jarius Sneed was a guy that, graded off the charts when it came to the athleticism, and you put him in the Chiefs system, and now he's been an awesome cornerback for the Chiefs and a great find in the 4th round. And, Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, guys that have sort of these particular traits that the Chiefs like. If you can coach them to put them in the right place, if they're smart enough to learn and adapt to the system, then do you need a specific player, or are you looking for a range of players that all have sort of this profile and weight and height and arm length and things like that you feel like I can do some different things with this guy, mold him into the player I want, and maybe the name specifically doesn't matter as much as the physical and overall profile of the player?
There are certainly some players that are just too good a fit or just too good at one aspect that the coaching staff really wants to emphasize.
Mm-hmm.
But the tiering, the clusters, I do think overall, especially outside the 1st round, really do give you that girth of possibility. And I do think that the Chiefs in particular are a team that embraces that philosophy. You hear Brett Veach talk about groups or clusters quite a bit. And then it comes down to what can the coaching staff do with them. Yes, they might fit a general parameter group to get into a given cluster, but each guy's going to need coaching points on different aspects. And so it's about the versatility of the coaching staff. And I think that's one thing, not just being able to coach up their scheme, but being able to adapt and put players that might have X strength versus X weakness versus the other guys in that cluster that are available. And they're very good at making sure that they emphasize and allow prospects to come into the system and play to their strengths while they work on their weaknesses, and not just sit back and kind of ponder how to improve before they're able to get on the field. I think nobody exemplifies that more than Jalen Watson last year, who I think Brett Veach did a very good job explaining it.
Yeah.
It wasn't really until the visit that it all started to click for them.
Which was a great story that they had at the combine. They met with him. It's not a good fit. Brought him in for a visit and okay, 180. This guy, we really like this guy a lot. Ryan Tracy is our guest. RogueAPC.com to go and get the 2023 NFL Draft Guide. It's so extensive. Have you already started working on the 2024 Draft Guide?
We have. Not super deep yet. We have about 25 prospects we've looked at. So.
Okay, have you already started on the
never-ending process.
Have you already started on the 2025 Draft Guide yet?
I have 3 guys on my watch list, but I can't say I've actually worked them up yet.
Have you started on the 2026 Draft Guide yet?
No, those guys are still in diapers. I'm out on that.
Okay, great. There was going to be a level. If you're like, you know what, there's one guy like 2027. Have you started on the 2027 Draft Guide yet? Ryan Tracy is our guest. That's how extensive it is, man. There's so much information in there. It's great. What would be the bigger impact, do you think, for the Chiefs? If you look through all these different prospects and things that you've looked at in the Draft Guide, would it be a bigger impact for the Chiefs to go, tackle in the 1st round, and let's say they're picking at 31. They're not trading up or trading back. So tackle that maybe can plug and play right tackle right now. Is that more impactful than to come back and get an edge or a wide receiver at 63? Would it be more impactful to take a wide receiver in the 1st round, come back and get maybe a tackle or an edge that might be available in the 2nd round, or then maybe edge one of those guys that may be there at 31 and come back with wide receiver tackle in the 2nd round? What do you think would be a more impactful based on how you looked at this draft for the Chiefs, maybe this year and even long term?
In terms of impact this next season in particular, I don't think anything trumps the tackle class, especially because if you're going to get a quality one that fits this scheme, I do think that is going to need a trade up into the 20s. After that would be the edges, because I think you have some opportunity there. And quite frankly, I'm a little bit more down on this wide receiver class than most. I think there's 2 first-round prospects, and I think the clusters go all the way down into the 5th round.
Wow.
So I think certainly in the top 100, I do think you need a wide receiver and a tackle out of the top 3 picks, but I think wide receiver is probably the lesser of the 2 options there in terms of impact, not only in 23 but 24. I think you can get away with the crew that you have catching passes from Patrick now. If you can get somebody that separates themselves in either skill set, like a big X that can elevate and win contested catches, or somebody that just takes the top back off in terms of downfield speed. So those are the two exceptions that you might want to lean towards 63 a little bit more than 95. Or if you really found someone like that, you might have to go at 31. But I think it's probably offensive tackle.
Who were the 2 first-round grades that you gave for wide receivers?
I have Jordan Addison and Jackson Smith-Njigba as the only first-round wide receivers.
Addison is my draft crush, so I am not mad about Addison being that guy. And then last one for you is you were talking about some of those guys in the second round. Are there a player 2 or 3 at wide receiver at 63 if they're on the board that or expected to be around on the board that you would like to see the Chiefs take? Because Mingo and Tillman and Mims are guys that have been talked about a lot around that area. But is there a guy or two, maybe one of those guys in the second round that you say, all right, if he's there, that one would fit, and that's who I'd go with?
I do like Tillman quite a bit. I think he's the best pure X in this draft. A lot of fans are big on Mingo, and I think he's got a little bit more development to go. But the guy that I would put right in there with them is A.T. Perry from Wake Forest.
Okay.
A little bit more explosive, a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah.
Has a little farther to go in terms of being able to come down with contested catches, but he's got great body control when he's in the air. And I do think that's a missing aspect of the Chiefs offense that they may be coming around to, is putting things up and allowing guys to not just win on the field in terms of vertical route running, but vertical off the ground. I think that might be something that Patrick in particular has to start looking at. The other guy that I would throw in there that I do find a little bit lower than them is Rashee Rice from SMU. He's got a nice, well-rounded, and when he puts it together, he can really show something.
Yeah.
But he needs some development time.
Yep. I like Rice as well. I think he's a guy that probably more than Quentin Johnston, Rice, actually uses his physical attributes and as more of a can play bully ball. And A.T. Perry is he was he like the tallest wide receiver? How big he is, but wasn't he like one of the tallest guys at the wide receiver spot? So you're not getting, it's not, you're not getting Zay Flowers or Josh Downs or anything with A.T. Perry, right?
Right.
Okay. So
very much the opposite. In fact, he came in just an eighth taller than Cedric Tillman.
Okay. Yeah.
He's at 6'0", 3'4".
Okay, well, yeah. Cedric Tillman's a big man as well, and I like him. I might even like Cedric Tillman more than Jalen Hyatt, but that's just me. So, not sure. Ryan Tracy is our guest. RGR Football on YouTube, Locked On Chiefs podcast, Rogue Analytics. The rogueapc.com is where you can go and get this massive, extensive draft guide that's there. Great stuff. And if you want to check out all of the different things throughout the year, NFL33.substack.com and Burger King's on Saturdays. So, Ryan, thank you for the time, man. I appreciate it. Great stuff. And seriously, the draft guide is just phenomenal. Great work that's put into it. Thank you for the time today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, and we'll be live on RGR all weekend.
Awesome.
So, y'all can check that out as well.
Very cool, man. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it, bud.
Cheers. Thank you.
Absolutely. There's Ryan Tracy. The 2027 draft guide, not started working on that. I mean, seriously, stop being lazy. Like, get on it. Like, do some work. Do something, right? I mean, just sitting around and rest on your laurels. Don't do that. Don't just rest on your laurels. Get to that 2027 draft guide. I was going to keep asking until he said no, finally. Ryan Tracy, good stuff there from him. And only 2 first-round grades on wide receivers, one of those being Jordan Addison. I really like him. So who knows where the Chiefs will end up going. But it sounds like when he's talking about that impact, it would be that tackle there, as put him at right tackle, call it a day, Jawan Taylor at left tackle, and go and have an impact this year. And then you can come back and maybe get that second-round wide receiver, maybe even, an edge or something like that would be more impactful for this year. Down the road, that could be a different story. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. I do want to look at the quarterbacks in the draft. He had mentioned that it's a massive upgrade from last year's, talent and expectations in the quarterback class, because last year there wasn't one, really. But I also want to look at the success rate of even drafting a quarterback in the first round. We'll get into some of those things coming up on the other side of the break. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter,
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe, and Drake. We will talk with Charlie Yook from the NFL Network, executive producer there, has produced the NFL Draft the last 15 years. So looking forward to talking to him about different things that go on behind the scenes, because that's fascinating to me. 913-912-4810 is the text line to be a part of the show, part of the conversation. 913-912-4810. Josh, how would you rank the quarterbacks? These 4 quarterbacks that have been talked about a lot.
Will Levis won.
Yeah.
Obviously, right?
After Will Levis goes number 1, how would you rank the other 3 clear-cut scrubs behind Will Levis?
You know, it's a simple question.
I know.
You'd think I could give you a simple answer.
It's hard to give
but
a
I
simple
refuse.
answer.
I refuse to give you a simple answer, because it kind of depends on who you are drafting, right? Not who you're drafting, but who the team doing the selection is. I'm a little bit nervous about the size on Bryce Young, but I've more or less gotten over that over the draft process. I like C.J. Stroud. We've talked about him being defined by his floor, which I think is kind of an unfair thing to do, but I'm pretty optimistic. I am absolutely enamored with Anthony Richardson. If it's not my money, I would probably take Anthony Richardson first. But if it's my job, if I'm the general manager of the Panthers, it's probably Young or Stroud. I know that's an unsimple answer to a very simple question, but it's a complicated process.
So I do worry about Bryce Young's size. I know that, the Mannings were talking about it and they were discussing Bryce Young, and usually when they're breaking down quarterbacks and stuff before the draft, there's not a whole lot of negativity they bring to the table. They usually find a way to turn the negative into like, well, this is actually something that won't be that big of a deal. Their point on Bryce Young was, well, he's always been smaller at the quarterback spot. Mm-hmm. So he's played his whole life. I think Peyton Manning or Eli said something about, it would be different if he was 6'4" in college and he was 5'10" when he got to the NFL. Then that would be a big deal, right? Then you're saying, okay, well, now can he adjust to losing his feet and losing 4 inches off his leg for some reason? Can he adjust to that? So yeah, I get that. This is somebody who's always played as a smaller type player compared to what the prototypes are. I just think that some of those baseline qualifiers are kind of there for a reason, and the height and the weight really worries me. That I know he came in at over 200 pounds at the combine. He ain't playing at 200 pounds.
No, absolutely not.
And I don't know, like he was under 6 foot, so it's not like you can list him at 6 foot and 205. No, he's not. He's not that. He's 5'11", and really he's played at like 185, 190, and that's concerning for someone who's already a little bit smaller. And I think if he was a few inches taller, I think it'd be a no doubt like this would be my number 1 draft pick. I think I'd probably put Bryce Young at number 1 because of all of the other things he can do. The height really does concern me. Number 2 to me would be Anthony Richardson. I have an idea of what C.J. Stroud is. I think I have an idea of what Will Levis is. But Anthony Richardson can be an absolute star and freak. He could be a total bust. But if I just think C.J. Stroud and Will Levis are kind of just there, and Stroud can be pretty good, but I think he's probably going to be somebody that you're going to have to surround him with a lot of really, really good players if he can get you to a Super Bowl. I think Will Levis is going to be a guy that's sort of like Jeff George. I think he's got a big arm and can make some awesome plays, but then ultimately he's going to be a guy that just never really can get it done. But Anthony Richardson, to me, I have him number 2 because I think baseline is bust, but I'd rather have a bust than just generic. I'd rather have Josh Rosen than Kirk Cousins.
And Josh Rosen wasn't a bust because his ceiling was too high. I mean, he was a safe pick. I think he went 10. The one thing on Anthony Richardson that I do think we may have actually gone too far on, and I get it, I'm doing it too, because you don't want to overextend your optimism and then get bit and then feel like a dummy. But I think the idea that he has like complete bottom out of the league in 3 years potential is an over exaggeration in that stretch. This dude's an outrageous athlete. If you are an offensive coordinator and you can't get competent offense out of an offense with Anthony Richardson running the whole thing, even if it's not right away, that's on you, man. That's your fault. Maybe his accuracy will never be like a incredibly calling card part of his game, right? Maybe that'll never be one of his positives. But everything else, I think his floor is higher than he gets credit for because of all those physical tools. And man, if you ever want to just put yourself through what he had to go through, go watch a little bit of Florida offensively. And I don't mean because he struggled. I mean because I want to see him in an NFL offense with an offensive coordinator who knows how they want to use him. Even if that's not right away, I might take Anthony Richardson first, and I hope he just falls to Detroit. Because let Jared Goff have one more year if you want. Figure out all your suspensions and everything. Maybe you just get Jared Goff the first 6 games. You bring Jameson Williams back when you bring Anthony Richardson in. But that fit to me would feel so good. And also, if you're Carolina and you don't want to go that route, you'd rather go Bryce Young or even Stroud, I would not balk at that one bit. It's a fun intricacies of having 3 really different quarterbacks at the top.
And then Will Levis.
And also Will Levis.
Who
is just like clearly 4, I think, right?
Yeah, but apparently the Colts are falling in love with him. Or
yeah, that makes sense.
It's a smoke screen, or the Colts really are. Like that's.
Let me check those odds again.
Is it Colts to Will Levis Colts? Because that seems to be like the last couple of days of like going number 4, Will Levis.
I doubled down on the Anthony Richardson going before Will Levis prop that we talked about a few days back, or maybe a week or so ago. And I'm going to see if I can tell if the Lions continue to move in Levis's favor, because for him to be the 3rd or 2nd quarterback off the board would be wild. We also haven't talked about this idea that the Texans might just not take a quarterback at 2.
I mean,
what are we doing? If you want to trade out, if somebody else wants to come get a quarterback and you're not in love, hey, get some more assets. But if you're going to just sit there and just figure out which of your defensive guys you want, that's cool. The top at least 2 or 3, I feel like you got to be really confident in. I guess it depends on how you feel about Jalen Carter, so maybe not. Maybe it's a one-man show. But if you're gonna draft a quarterback, and you just don't care if it's at 2 or where are they at next, 8, right? If you don't love a quarterback enough to take him at 2, somebody else probably does, right? You can't move that pick. That's a very, very strange spot to be in.
Yeah. And here's the thing: if I'm the Texans and I'm not going to take a quarterback at number 2 just because I simply need a quarterback if I don't see somebody there that is a franchise quarterback. If I say there's one franchise quarterback in this draft and it's Bryce Young and I'm sitting there at number 2 and Bryce Young goes number 1, I'm not just going to take the next best quarterback and go, C.J. Stroud, he's better than what we have right now. Well, at that point, I'm taking Anthony Richardson at number 2, which is who I would take. If I was the Texans, I would take Anthony Richardson at number 2 and, go for it. Or I would, as you say, trade back, build around it, and hope that you're in a position to get Caleb Williams next year.
Sure. Everybody likes Will Anderson also. I don't think that him going at 2 is an objectively dumb pick, but he's not Myles Garrett. And I don't think many people are seeing him project that way. And if you're not in love with the quarterback, that's one thing, but I simply don't believe that no one else in the NFL would be interested in your 2nd overall pick.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And also, if Davis Mills doesn't throw a touchdown and a 2-point conversion in that game,
you're number 1.
You have Bryce Young, and this is the Panthers' problem, or whoever's at 2.
It's Davis Mills playing chess. Like, no, I'm trying to keep my job. How do
it
you
was
do that?
incredible.
If I win this game, they're not going to draft Bryce Young now. They can't. We'll take a time.
Bad news for my bets, by the way. Who will be drafted earlier? Will Levis versus Anthony Richardson. Will Levis is minus 300. Anthony Richardson plus 235.
Oof.
So I'm probably going to...
Because it looks like number 4 is going to be Will Levis, right? The Colts, it seems like that. So Anthony Richardson, to me, should go number 2. But we'll see what ends up happening with that. I do want to take a time out.
Borrow $30
to what? Just then give back to DraftKings?
Yeah.
I'm gonna hedge. I'm just gonna bet the other side just to see if I can get back to 0. That'd be great. Let me try that. We'll take a time out. We'll come back, and I do want to know if it is even worth it to take a quarterback in the first round. It certainly was worth it for the Chiefs. There's no doubt about that. But we'll look at the success rate, and if you can get to the ultimate prize with that first-round quarterback. We'll do that next.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone Work.
news, you may never need their award-winning customer service at all.
Thankfully, the Chiefs don't need a quarterback in the draft. So I went back to 1999 because that was the last time there were 3 quarterbacks selected, 1, 2, 3. And that doesn't mean that it's going to happen this year because the Cardinals are picking third. So is the team going to trade up in front of the Colts if they get a feel that Colts love Will Levis or Anthony Richardson to trade up to number 3, and maybe it goes young, Texans take a quarterback, somebody trades up to number 3 to take a quarterback, and then the Colts take a quarterback. It might be 1, 2, 3, 4. But the last time we saw 1, 2, 3 was in 1999. Tim Couch, Donovan McNabb, Akili Smith. So I went back to 1999 and started there and looked at every single first-round quarterback that has been taken since 1999, ending with the 2021 draft. Because I'm not going to count the 2022 draft because I'm looking at guys that have made the playoffs, divisional round, championship, Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl, and that's unfair to then add in last year's draft class. It's really unfair for 2021 as well, but those names sort of let you know that whether they're on the right path or not. Trevor Lawrence certainly could get there. Mm-hmm. Zach Wilson,
probably not.
Trey Lance, probably not. Justin Fields, we'll see. They're going to surround him with a lot of talent, but we'll find out. And then Mac Jones, probably not. So that's 2021. But quarterbacks drafted in the first round since 1999. There have been 68 quarterbacks drafted in the first round since 1999. How many of those 68 have won a Super Bowl?
I'm going to say at least 67 of them.
That's right. 67 different quarterbacks have won the Super Bowl since 1999.
Pretty much automatic.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy.
That's unbelievable. Actually, 69 out of the 68
nice.
have won
That's
a Super
crazy.
Bowl. How many of the quarterbacks of the 68 have won a Super Bowl?
I don't want to undercut the number, which is why I like to overshoot the number, but I'm thinking about it. A lot of those Super Bowls are Tom Brady.
That's right.
Not a first rounder.
Peyton
A couple
Manning
of those were Eli.
Peyton was 98. So.
And so Peyton's got a couple.
But Peyton was 98, though.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And not how many Super Bowls have they won, but how many of them won a Super Bowl?
Different quarterbacks have won at least one Super Bowl.
I'm going to say, since 99, I'm going to say 6. Nope, 7.
Drake, you want to throw a dart of the 68 first-round? 11. The answer is 6.
Ah!
You were going, and I'm like, oh, you sick. Nope, 7.
If I was playing Price is Right, I would have stuck at 7.
Yeah,
or at 6.
But you would have, if you're playing Price is Right, you went over. So
no, in Price is Right rules, I would have just gone 5. Probably would have.
Yeah, $1, Bob. That's what I would have gone.
6.
6 of the 68 quarterbacks have won a Super Bowl.
Am I about to play Sports or Leisure, or are you just going to tell me? Because I'm thinking about it.
And by the way, only one since 2009. Do you know who the one quarterback in the first round drafted to win a Super Bowl since 2009?
I do, Jason. I believe that was Patrick Mahomes.
Johnny's Tavern, it's yours. Well done. Somebody's heading to Johnny's Tavern.
Am I smarter than a 5th grader? Here we go.
Sure. The 6 quarterbacks drafted in the first round that have won a Super Bowl since 1999. Eli Manning.
Got it, yeah.
Big Ben.
Big Ben.
It's in the same draft of 2004.
Oh, yeah.
Aaron Rodgers in 2005. Joe Flacco in 2008.
Elite.
And then Matt Stafford 2009, Patrick Mahomes 2017.
Matt Stafford's like, hold on. So now hit me with those names all one more time if you would, because I want to play a different version of that game.
Eli Manning, Big Ben, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Flacco, Matthew Stafford, Patrick Mahomes.
So Stafford's the only one who didn't do it with his original team at least the once.
Yep.
I guess all those guys did only with their original team. At this
point. Eli was drafted by the Chargers.
Thank you, Texter.
So, but yes, your point.
That's just interesting that Stafford's the outlier there because it was late in his career, different spot.
Yep.
But, wow.
And so there, of the 68 quarterbacks, we know 6 have won a Super Bowl. How many have played in a Super Bowl but didn't win? Played but didn't win. So at least you got your team there to a Super Bowl, right?
I'm not going to try to do all the math on that one too hard. I'm going to say it's probably, let's say 5 more.
5 more? Drake's on the phone. I'm going to guess for him. I say 6. Nice job, Drake. Six.
I almost just
You
said
went
6
5 and
again.
7. You went 5
God!
and 7, and both answers were 6.
Six!
You're so stupid.
I'm so dumb.
6 quarterbacks have played for a Super Bowl, but did not win of these 68. So that means 12 quarterbacks of the 68 drafted in the first round have even played
Crazy.
in a Super Bowl. Those quarterbacks to play in a Super Bowl are Donovan McNabb, Rex Grossman,
Holy bleep! That one I would have been here for a while.
Matt Ryan,
Matt Ryan for sure. Yeah.
Cam,
Wow. Yeah.
Jared Goff, and Joe Burrow.
Wow.
Those are your 12 quarterbacks of the 68 since 1999 that have been drafted in the first round.
How many held a clipboard during the Super Bowl?
Let's see. Blaine Gabbert
Yeah.
held a clipboard in
That's
the Super
true.
Bowl. Try to scan quickly to see.
This would be a toughie.
Holding a clipboard in the Super Bowl.
I'm usually pretty good at knowing backup quarterbacks, but I don't know that I
know.
could do it from like 2000.
Let's see. Not Tannehill, not Locker or Ponder or Bradford or Tebow or Sanchez or Freeman or Jamarcus Russell or Brady Quinn or Vince Young or Matt Leinart or Jay Cutler or Jason Campbell or J.P. Losman. These are some amazing names in the first round, right?
I love this trip down name
Yes.
memory lane. Are we sure Jason Campbell was never the backup on a good team later in his career?
He might have been. I don't know.
That's the one that sounds plausible to me. I don't know why.
But here are the draft picks, the number in where they were drafted in the first round of the players that have won a Super Bowl.
Real quick, Washington, Oakland, Chicago, Cleveland, and Cincinnati for Jason Campbell.
So
no Super Bowls.
2 Super Bowls.
No
then.
Super Bowls there.
The 6 quarterbacks to win a Super Bowl, the number of the first round pick they were drafted.
Okay.
1, 1, 10, 11, 18, 24. The 6 quarterbacks to make a Super Bowl but not win it. 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, and 22, Rex Grossman. That's the clear outlier, is 22, Rex Grossman.
Interesting.
But it ain't something that you draft the guy and then you're eventually going to get to a Super Bowl, because of the 6 that have won it, only 5 won it with the team that drafted them.
It's fascinating.
Because Stafford went somewhere else.
And also, it's a quarterback's league. We know this.
Yeah.
But the rest of the team does still matter.
It still
Because there are a lot
matters.
of good quarterbacks, really good quarterbacks who went in the first round that don't qualify because you got to get the rest of it right, too.
But also, if you're not taking the first or second quarterback,
Yeah.
I mean, the odds of you finding the right guy in the first round, I mean, Big Ben was the 3rd quarterback taken. There you go. McNabb, 2nd quarterback. Eli 1, Big Ben 3rd, Rodgers 2, Flacco 2, Stafford 1, Cam 1, Goff 1, Mahomes 2, Burrow 1. I'm telling you, I take Will Levis. It's just me.
Kansas City's official home of the NFL Draft. Sports Radio 810, WHB, Kansas City.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you. We head up until 2 o'clock. The Zone presented by Google Fiber. Coming up less than a week from today, it is the NFL Draft. It'll be here. We cannot wait for it to be here. If you're not going to be down there, you can watch it on TV. Even if you're down around some of the festivities, you can watch it on TV, NFL Network. Charlie Yook is our guest, the executive producer of NFL Network, joining us here in the Zone. Charlie, how are you?
We're great. We can't wait to be in Kansas City, Jason.
Well, we are pumped. We're excited. It's been a long time coming for the draft to be here, just to even experience it. Once this thing went on the Traveling Road Show, it was like, hey, man, boy, could Kansas City land the draft? That'd be a pretty awesome thing. And so even in contention and then landing in it, and then now it finally being here less than a week. So everybody is ready to go and getting their plans ready, parties and when I'm going to be out there, where am I going to be, all of that stuff. So it's been a blast.
It's going to be great. And as you know this, too, and the Chiefs fans and Kansas City folks, the city is the center of the NFL universe, right, with the Super Bowl parade, the draft here, and then when we kick off our season in Kansas City. So we're pumped. Get the barbecue ready. I'm going to eat my weight in barbecue next week.
As you should, man. As you should. I hope everybody does when they get into town. It's been amazing what the NFL draft has become, and even the NFL Combine. It's not all that surprising because the NFL can just simply own every date on the calendar. We joke about there's a primetime event for releasing the schedule, and guess what? I watch it, and then we talk about it the next day. But in a way, are you surprised at all of the explosion of the NFL draft and the Combine, and now going from city to city and things like that, to where how big of an event it's become, that it's an entire draft season leading up to next week?
Yeah, I think when we first shifted this, right, changing the draft to prime time and then making it a traveling road show, the initial concerns are going to be what is the interest. But as when you look back, it's like, of course, this was the right decision, Jason. Like, people are going to show up in droves. I base a lot of my stuff on fact. The NFL is king. There's no doubt about it. And you know this, where you are, that city, that team, like when you can grab onto something like that and then, include the 31 other fan bases to a location like Kansas City, to an event like the draft, why wouldn't you want to be there if you can't watch it on NFL Network? It's just a party. It's something I've described and we've described as an off-season Super Bowl, and quite frankly, the city itself and the host club treats it that way. So, if they're going to treat it that way and we're going to present it that way, why not make it the biggest party we possibly can? Because this truly is a celebration, right? We don't know what we don't know. We don't know which players are going to score touchdowns in the Super Bowl like some of the Chiefs draft picks did last year. So we're excited to share these experiences in this story, and like I said, weather permitting, to have maybe the largest crowd ever in the history of the draft.
Yeah, we cannot wait. Charlie Yook is our guest, executive producer from the NFL Network. The build up and the lead up, the prep work and what goes into producing a TV show and the NFL draft, to televise that for 3 days worth, and on Saturday when it's just as inside baseball as it gets, and down to like the details, and you have your NFL draft lovers that are watching on Saturday. What's the build up like for you guys there at the NFL Network of getting this thing ready to roll and having everything in place so that when Roger Goodell walks out there and says the Carolina Panthers are on the clock, that everything's taken care of and it goes off smoothly?
Yeah, look, it's a great question, and kind of pulling the curtains like behind the Wizard of Oz. We start our preparation about a month after the draft ends. So when this draft ends, we're going to look forward to 2024 in Detroit. It's no different than when Vegas ended. We kind of looked ahead to Kansas City. You're looking at the prospects, what some of the names could be, what the location's going to be like. So this has been being planned since June, and there's a lot of talented women and men that put a lot of effort into how this is going to be presented, not just on the screen, as you said, but on NFL Plus for us, on our O&O Fast channels, and in venue. So we do our homework, right? Preparation is key for anything in life, and let alone this is humongous event. So we feel like we're in a good shape. We've got, as far as like some behind the numbers here, we've got over 600 players identified with our videotapes. We have over 1,800 videotapes to play. We're not going to play all of them, obviously, but we're ready for that. All 32 clubs, we know what they need. We know how to pivot. The only thing we don't know is how the draft is going to happen, and that's the best part of this event, Jason, as you know, is the cast that occurs at the top when news breaks or a pick doesn't go a certain way or there's a surprise pick, all fans react the same way, and we want to make sure we capture all those moments.
Charlie Luke is our guest, executive producer of the NFL Network. You've got all of this video to roll. You've got all of these. You mentioned the videos that are there and the highlight packages, and then you've got your analysts that are the experts that are going to be talking around that and what this particular person offers, what that person offers. Maybe another peek behind the curtain. How soon do you guys have the pick before it's actually announced to the public?
So that's a great question.
That you
so
can have everything ready.
We get it about 30 seconds to a minute before we line up our tapes and graphics.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
But we never, ever tell our announcers that in their ears.
Okay.
So if there's a misconception that the picks are tipped, they're never doing that. Neither is ABC. Neither is ESPN. That's an agreement we've made many years ago. So even if someone is pontificating on air saying, I think this could be it, that's their own person coming up with this, whether it's through their connections, their text, whatever their contacts are. So we take that moment when Commissioner Goodell or whomever's making the pick on the podium to be that organic moment, not just for the viewers and the consumers, but for our talent as well. So that's kind of a peek behind the curtain. We don't ever want to cheat that moment. I think it's important to be natural in that, because if there's a surprise, let's act naturally. We don't want to surprise them before the surprise happens. So that's kind of a peek behind the curtain there.
Maybe not a specific one, but have there been times when you're like, oh my good, they're going there, and you're just sitting back waiting to see their reaction of, I can't wait for people to know what's about to happen?
Yeah, look, it'll ring true for a lot of Chiefs fans in 2017 when the Bears moved up to number 2. Some people thought maybe Deshaun Watson, maybe Patrick Mahomes, that it was Mitch Trubisky, and I think a lot of people were kind of taken aback at that. It happens all the time. That's one recent example, but that's the best, I think, moments of the draft, and I think your listeners would agree. Like when you don't know if something's going to happen and it pivots and moves, that's when this thing truly takes a life form of its own. Because it's fun. At the end of the day, it is a fun event to watch when there's absolutely no football being played, which is amazing to me and a lot of people. So it's a fantasy draft come to life. One of these individuals will become a Hall of Famer. We just don't know who. One of these individuals, like I said, will score a touchdown, a meaningful touchdown in the Super Bowl. And that's the best part of this. We just don't know who it's going to be.
You're from Chicago, so you mentioned that particular draft. But do you ever get too emotional or invested in a pick or the draft, or being the professional and being in the business for a long time? Does that start to sort of wear off of years covering the sport?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. That particular year and that particular pick, I may have had a little emotion, but typically,
was it excited or?
I would say maybe the opposite. But again, it's the past. I've grown. I'm growing, Jason.
Okay.
Look, at the end of the day, we want to take all the emotion out of it and make sure that emotion's connected to the viewer and make sure it's connected to what it means. So it's not as hard as you think. I recall someone in an interview years back, I mentioned like each specific group, there was a different fan represented. There was an Eagles fan in the front row. There was there was a Packers fan, there was a Cowboys fan. So, but we all come together. Like we know we have a job to do. So it's not as hard as it will be. But there's obviously loyalties from where we all grew up. Like, I mean, we're victims to laundry, right? Where we grew up. So I'm from Chicago. I come with the good and the bad. So
yeah, I mean, you're in this business because there was a passion and a love that then this grew from that, right? I mean, it's hard to really just completely take off that
well, where it spins to, and what's great, and I think this is what's great about a city like Kansas City and the fans of the Chiefs, is that people from that area that root for that team have a respect for the history of our game, what this means, and what it looks like going forward. So being able to produce this in Kansas City is not taken lightly by any of us. It's truly an honor, and we really, like I said, I cannot wait to get there to see how much Kansas City is going to show up, because we feel like they're going to show up.
I want to pick your brain real quick, not to rub salt or anything in 2017, but when the trade was made, you said the excitement, it wasn't really excited. It was sort of the exact opposite. Were you hoping Mahomes or Watson, or what was the reaction sort of there when people know you're a Bears fan and waiting for it to come in and then finding out?
I think we were all surprised. Me as a Bears fan, I was surprised. It's like, are they moving up for Solomon Thomas here? But I don't think anyone, if you truly asked them, though, Jason, could have ranked the quarterbacks in a certain way that they believe now. Because if we knew now what we knew then, like there's no doubt 15 is going number 1 overall. Like there's no question there. So like I said, I'm going to beat a dead horse here. That's the beauty of this actual event. We just don't know anything. We really don't, because if we knew that, Mahomes is going a little bit higher. If we knew what we did when Brady went, I'm pretty sure he's not picked 199. It's an inexact science, but there's a lot of people who put a lot of, time and effort into watching tape to figure out what do they know better than the others. But it's a coin flip, man. We really don't know, and that's what we try to capture too. That there's good and bad, and we're pretty fair and measured in our analysis. It is a celebration, but we want to make sure if someone takes a player, look, there could be some holes in this game, but if they succeed, this is the reason why.
Visiting with Charlie Oak, executive producer for the NFL Network, and you mentioned that these guys, the analysts, they don't know who that draft pick is going to be until it's announced by Roger Goodell. And I think back to that 2017 draft, and it's obviously a big deal around here. They trade up to number 10. There was a lot of talk about Deshaun Watson on the set. Of is this Deshaun Watson? They're trading up. They've got Alex Smith. Why would they trade up? They don't need a quarterback. They've got Alex Smith. Is this are they going defensive, a defensive player here? Chris Jones was at the Chiefs draft party, and he thought they were going to go defensive player, and he was not happy when they drafted Patrick Mahomes at the Chiefs draft party.
Yeah.
He was on stage and was not too happy about a quarterback. But it's just fun to look back of that at number 10, so many different opinions as to where they would end up going, and then we were all sort of, surprised together and then to see what that happened.
That's the beauty. We're going to look back 5 years from now from this draft and be like, how could they have done this? How could they have done that? I mean, if you ask Eagles and Vikings fans right now, between Jalen Reagor and Justin Jefferson, they're going to tell you but would the Eagles' fortune have changed if they did get Justin Jefferson, because they maybe wouldn't have gotten, A.J. Brown? So who knows? The butterfly effects last well beyond the draft itself. So at some point, you got to trust the leadership groups that each club and each fan has, and then kind of go from there. But it's so much fun, man. Honestly, I kind of want to get on a plane now just to start this thing going and put the Panthers on the clock. Because let's be honest, too, we have no idea what the Panthers are going to do. And I think some people think they do, but what if they change their mind? It's happened before.
We're wondering what the reaction would be around here if either there's an announcement in the 20s that there's been a trade, the Chiefs are now on the clock, or at pick number 31, there's been a trade. Somebody else is now on the clock, and the Chiefs trade out of the first round. I'm just wondering, the reaction. Obviously, the first one, the reaction would be crazy. The second one, I think there would be a lot of disappointment, but we've said around here that, the parade is more enjoyable, is a better party than the draft night. And so if they got to trade down because they think it'll make them more likely to win a Super Bowl, then by all means do that. Plus, you're kind of increasing the intrigue around here for Friday,
Yeah, look, and let's not, even if, let's say, my friend, they trade out of the first round. You still got so much beer, barbecue. We got Fall Out Boy playing on Thursday night after the draft ends. We've got plenty to do there. It's very family friendly with like playgrounds and combine stuff they can do, and there's vendors there selling so much merch. There's the Lombardi Trophy. There's hundreds of things to do that even the casual fan would be gravitating towards. So while I have no doubt the champs are probably, in my mind, going to stay put, but we don't know. Brett Veach is going to want to do it, and Andy Reid's going to want to do it. And then, should that happen, I guarantee you and your fans on Saturday, we're confirmed actually to talk to Coach Reid in our broadcast. We'll ask him that question.
Awesome.
Exactly.
That's very cool. Last one for you. I know the answer for me in this question, but for you, how does the NFL Network, how do you think you guys separate yourself when there's multiple choices of how you watch the draft and consume it? What do you guys do that you feel like separate yourself as to attract them?
So it's a great question, because we work very closely with the broadcast partners, ABC and ESPN, and the league. I think we have friends over there. It's a small business. I think they do a great job. What we do, and we're confident in, and why we're pulling out this lineup on night 1 and night 2, is we feel we have the best pieces. We have Rich Eisen, who's the best host. We have Daniel Jeremiah, who we feel is the best draft analyst. We have Charles Davis, who calls NFL games during the season. We have Joel Klatt, who does college games during the season. We have Ian Rappaport, who's the greatest insider there is. We have Kurt Warner, our Hall of Fame quarterback, talking about when all these quarterbacks happen. We have Melissa Stark, who's Emmy nominated for Sunday Night Football, doing the player interviews. We feel that those pieces give us the strongest presentation possible, and we'll see those pieces on night 1 and night 2. We feel pretty good about our lineup. It doesn't take away from anything anyone else does. We just feel really good about who we're doing, and the names that I just mentioned to you are at the forefront of what they do. So we're looking forward to it.
I think the hardcore NFL fans have a certain preference for the station that they go to and watch, and that is for me the NFL Network. And on Saturday, I think it's there's only one place to watch it because I want to know about the draft picks. And
we appreciate it.
You guys do an amazing job of, as the draft picks are happening, you guys are talking about them and discussing them. And I think that's important for people that are watching the draft. They want to see who their team's taking.
And I think it's important to have fun too. So we're not trying to be funny.
Yeah.
Right, Jason? We're trying to have fun. That's why you see a viral segment like Stump the Truck on Saturday when we come up with names of players that maybe not the most common names to see if our preparation has the tape of this player. So we try to balance everything. We want to make sure we're giving credence and good coverage to all 32 fan bases and franchises. It's one of the hardest events to do, but it's one of the most rewarding events. And let's get this thing going.
Charlie Yook, executive producer of the NFL Network, and the draft coming up in 6 days. Charlie, really appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Have fun when you get here to town. We cannot wait for it to happen. I wish it was happening right now, but should be a blast next week.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Charlie Yook, executive producer of the NFL Network and the NFL Draft, obviously coming here to Kansas City, getting ready for that, and just an entire weekend celebration of Kansas City and the Chiefs as well with the NFL Draft. So looking forward to that. I do think the NFL Network separates itself. I'm not saying that just because we just had Charlie on. I think it separates itself on Saturday the most. You can go back and forth because the top picks, you've got your experts weighing in. There's tons of film on that. There's tons of people that have their different opinions on them. But when you get into the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, I want to see who the teams are taking. So when the Chiefs are on the clock in the 5th round and they select somebody, I don't want it just to be a scroll on the bottom of the screen and then there's other things going on TV at the time. I want to see sort of a breakdown of here's what this player is. NFL Network gives me that. So there's only one choice for me on Saturday, and that is the NFL Network. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling here on this Friday, heading up until 2 o'clock. It's The Zone, presented by Google Fiber. More right after this.
Mick Schaefer in the Zone is brought to you by Atomic.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Thank you to Charlie Yook right there talking some NFL draft. I'm the NFL Network executive producer of the NFL Network and producing the NFL Draft the last 15 years. Some interesting stuff there. As we were talking with Charlie and focusing on the NFL Draft, news came out from the Kansas City Royals, and it is unfortunate, the news from the Kansas City Royals.
It's getting kind of hard to believe things are going to get better.
Royals release, or the Royals sent out an email release.
Yeah, it could have been worse.
Sorry. After consultation with several doctors, Royals pitcher Chris Bubich has decided to have ulnar collateral ligament reconstruction surgery. Bubich and Royals head athletic trainer Kyle Turner, they'll be available for a conference call this afternoon, so about 3:30 Central Time. So we'll hear from Chris Bubich. We'll hear from the trainer and better explanation, I guess, of the Chris Bubich has decided to have ulnar collateral ligament reconstruction surgery after consultation with several doctors.
It's getting kind of hard to believe things are going to get better.
This was the concern when the second opinion was needed for some underlying concerns from Matt Quattrero on Sunday before the game. He said that they should probably have had a little bit more concern, a little more urgency the night before, but he's getting a second opinion because they just...
underlying issues was Monday.
Yeah. Was it underlying issues?
Because I was out there and I felt it. I felt all the air in Kauffman Stadium briefly vacate through the open air, and then
that's right.
We all went, oh yeah, second opinion. That usually means good things are coming.
And we said, look, not every flexor strain ends up with Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
But it feels like Tommy John surgeries start with or have some connection to the flexor strain. And obviously when you've got that pack of muscles that are there, and if they get strained, then you're working on other things that are making up for the strain in the muscle, which then is the ligament that has to put on more of the work, more of the force, and then you damage that, and you have Tommy John surgery. I've got an idea, but what do you make of the Bubich has decided? Sorry. Bubich
I'm sad.
It's getting kind of hard to believe things are going to get better.
I'm sorry, Jason. Go ahead and ask what you're going to ask me.
Been drowning so long to believe the tide is going to turn.
What do you make of Bubich has decided to have Tommy John surgery?
I didn't really get hung up on it until like the third time I read it. I actually think I saw Andy Rodgers' tweet first, so I began processing it then.
Well, the first thing was just, he's having Tommy John surgery.
Right, and then when I saw, because that's also how the Royals phrased it in the tweet they put out, not just in the press release, but they have out for the public, is that phrase, Royals pitcher Chris Bubich has decided to have. And that, to me, is a little bit weird. I hadn't seen that there was a presser coming from the trainer and everything, so I do wonder if there will be some clarification in that. I think the implication is that there may have been some other option. I think that's the if it was a decision, if Bubich, he himself, not the Royals, not a doctor or whatever, if they're saying there was a decision made, it means there were multiple options, right? And in this case, I am not insinuating that there are multiple good options.
Yeah.
If your UCL is in bad shape and you think your options could be, I could try to pitch through it here for this team that's won one game at home in the month of April, or I could go ahead and get the surgery done now and try to be back sooner. I would certainly have advised him to the latter if that was the case. But what I make of it is it's a little bit weird phrasing, and I am very intrigued to hear the details we get from this presser later today.
My guess and read in it would be there were multiple options, that it might have just been, hey, we'll shut you down for a couple of months, see if it can recover that way, see if things can get better, but understand that after those couple of months, if we're sitting here in July or August and it has not recovered to the way that we want, you will then have to have Tommy John surgery.
Right.
So maybe the underlying part is that, hey, Tommy John surgery is going to be on the table if this or this does not work, or we can go ahead and do it right now. If you wait till August or September and have the surgery, well, now you're 100% out next year.
Right.
You are, and you've been out this year because you haven't been pitching. So you would be then out 2023 and 2024. Okay, if you have it late April, maybe you could return August of 2024. The recovery is usually 12 to 18 months before pitchers are back on the mound and throwing. I would not count on Kris Bubic pre-All-Star game next year. And then after that, we'll see what he looks like, what he's pitching like. But the other thing that sucks is you are adding at minimum a year service time to Kris Bubic without him actually playing for you. It's not like he's down in the minors and not accruing time.
Yeah.
He's at the big leagues and accruing major league service time. So instead of 2 and change, when Kris Bubic next year at this time will have 3 and change, and he'll be going into arbitration coming off that, which that first year might be, cheaper arbitration, but it's just one less year of team control for the Royals while he recovers from Tommy John surgery.
And the two things in the immediate, even in a season that we can say is like a lost year, despite the fact that it's April 21st, it certainly feels that way, right? I mean, hopefully they'll pick up the pace, but not lose 120 some games, whatever it would end up being. But not only was it an immediate bright spot that Kris Bubic seemed like this retooled, extra-dimensional pitcher, not, himself exceeding into other dimensions, but like he had a new dimension to his game that was exciting, that felt new, that felt like growth, that felt like the future. And it was such a bright glimmer of this year. It gave you something to look forward to. I was kind of joking, half joking maybe yesterday, and now it's maybe 30% of a joke of, just go ahead and go sign Madison Bumgarner. Because you need someone who can throw innings that don't matter, that doesn't have any investment into your future. Who in Omaha needs to be getting those starts right now? Because I don't think there's a great answer at the moment. Who do you want to speed up the process for, who wasn't already supposed to be here now? And if it's Madison Bumgarner, there's a name and kind of some fun to it. We can kind of, we can get our chuckles in. But if it's just some other combination of dudes, it is one more time every 5 days that the Royals become borderline irrelevant. Like, that just deeply sucks.
Matt Quatraro talked about, with the off day, they could skip Kris Bubic's turn in the rotation and turn it over and get back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you wouldn't have to have a starter until, the 25th. You wouldn't have to have somebody to fill in for Kris Bubic until the 25th. That's not the route they took. They've got Taylor Clark going tonight as an opener. Johnny Holstaff going up against
who is pitching for the Angels?
This
another committee thing?
Random sort of mom and pop shop pitcher, sort of a fly-by-night guy, Shohei Ohtani. But he's got an 8.6 ERA. Excuse me, he's got a .86 ERA.
Decimals placement, so important.
Mundane details.
Sorry, I didn't realize he still has a sub-1 ERA.
.86 ERA.
This guy. Royals should just keep him here.
Yep. The first two numbers, not counting 0 for Shohei Ohtani, and his ERA is 8.6. Taylor Clark's is 6.7. So, really, 6.75, 0.86.
What's the difference?
I mean, 8 is higher than 6. I feel like Taylor Clark's better. But no, you got to deal with Shohei Ohtani and a sub-1 ERA, and then you got to deal with him hitting submarine shots out of the ballpark and hitting 450, 500-foot bombs. So that'd be fun. It'd be fun. So
I'm so
Royals
sad.
baseball.
It's so sad, man. Like, even when you started to give up hope on the lineup, it was like, oh man, well, at least we're seeing some stuff from the pitching. And then you kind of had your rougher moments, but you could still hang your hat on, well, at least Bubic has been, what? Well, it was cold. Maybe it's just the velo dropping because of second opinion. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know what I would tell the Royals right now. They're like, hey, so what can we do to make sure people don't just forget we exist before it ever hits 80 degrees in Kansas City? And I don't know what there is to do right now. It is it is a dark day for Royals baseball.
Well, I mean,
It's been a dark month.
Yeah.
It's getting kind of hard to believe things are going to get better.
I think things will eventually get better because, I mean, it can't get worse than this, right? There's no...
Is this rock bottom? You know what's funny is one of the things I wrote down and I was going to talk about today, I ended up erasing it on the format, was, is this rock bottom for the Royals? But I did not. I erased it because I thought to myself, no, I'll ask that question once we get information on Bubic.
Yeah.
Because if Bubic has Tommy John, then that
That's
announcement would be rock bottom for the Royals. Where, all joking aside, you do wonder, can it get worse? I mean, obviously it can, but will it get worse than a 4-15 start when this team was, should have won around, 70 games or so? It's been a terrible start, and you're one of two bright spots on the season, Vinny Pasquantino being one of them, Chris Bubic being the other, is now out for the year and parts of next year with Tommy John surgery. That's pretty much rock bottom. Let's be honest. We can be pessimistic. We can talk about the, it can always get worse. You think you're at the ground floor and there's always another, floor below that in the elevator. Can always be worse. Get it? Understandable. But
Buddy Bell is spinning in his grave right now.
Yeah.
He's not dead, but the Royal season is.
This Royal season is spinning in its grave right now?
I think it's just laying there.
Okay.
I don't know if that's got much juice right now. And this is something else that I've mentioned this several times over the course of the season already. But one of the things that just makes this a force multiplier in terms of bummer factor is that, if you just scroll through Royals Twitter right now, you are seeing people who have watched this team be not very good. In fact, watched this team be really, really atrocious and hard to watch throughout this first month of the season. Again, they're going to end the month of April with one win in Kauffman Stadium. That's crazy. You're watching those fans, though, who have been through that this month. And you know what they are? Sad, disappointed, frustrated, angry. Emotions you feel about a team you do still care about. This is all of the negativity that ends up being piled on around the Royals. Earned negativity still comes from a place of caring, of wanting them to be good, interesting, relevant, any of it. And this is not like a rant about how did you not get Bubic out of there, because especially with this result, I tend to think that before that start ever began, the beginning stages of the UCL issues were probably coming together. We'll hear about that later, I'm sure, and get the info the Royals give us. But there is just a profound sadness, and the rest of the city is about to have a party here in 5 days about the team that has won, that is completely ingrained in this city, that everyone does talk about 12 months out of the year. Honestly, it's just sad. It's not, this isn't a blame game. I don't know that there are things that this administration could have done to make it better right now. I'm sure there are some things, but you can blame Dayton, or you can want to blame John Sherman or whatever. People are going to send their vitriol in whatever directions they do, but the reason there is so much of that vitriol right now is because it's coming from a place of sadness and wanting this team to be good and relevant and interesting and anything other than just a pit of sadness.
If they don't go Johnny Holstaff opener moving forward with that fifth spot, options down in AAA, pitchers who have started for the Storm Chasers. Heasley has 4 starts and has an 8.8 ERA. Mike Mayers has 4 starts, has a 7.9 ERA. Max Castillo has 3 starts. He's got a 7.24 ERA. Austin Cox, part of that 2018 draft by the Royals. He's got a couple of starts with a 3.86 ERA. And Drew Parrish was a 2019 draft pick. 2 starts, has a 2.7 ERA. Neither Cox or Parrish has made it to the big leagues. Parrish, I believe. No, Austin Cox was a non-roster invitee this year to the draft. You'd have to make a move. Oh, I know what that move would be. Bubic on the 60-day. There's your move for the 40-man. But yeah, those are the pitchers. Oh, also Jackson Kowar started 1 game. He's pitched out of bullpen a few times, but he started 1 game. He's got a 10 ERA. So.
And what I just can't remember what's the latest on Daniel Lynch at this point.
Probably May 1st is when, so
So,
they might
like,
be limping to get there
can-
for Daniel Lynch.
And
Yeah,
then,
could be.
as a testament to Royals fans, once again, if Daniel Lynch starts and has 2 or 3 good starts in a row, people are going to be electric for it.
Yeah, back on the bus.
But it's going to be a limp to get there, and then it's
Yeah.
a lot to put on Daniel Lynch's shoulders.
Yep. So, I mean, he hasn't even started, like, he's not, on a rehab assignment or anything. So there's going to be a couple of 2 or 3 trips through the rotation for this spot. We know one of them, Taylor Clark. Who the next couple of are? I don't know. I'm not sure. We'll find out. We'll try to have some fun with cuts next. But we know it ain't Chris Bubich raising the roof, so do you have an idea, Josh, as to who you think will raise the roof this week? And Devin Booker, can he raise a
Yeah, I got to get my energy back up
You know
to where
what?
it
Let's
needs
go.
to be. Hold on. I'm going to raise my roof.
Yeah, raise
raise
your
my
roof.
energy because the Phoenix Suns are going to be okay, I think. Kawhi didn't play last night, so look, I mean, my chest thumping here is going to be relatively limited. But yes, indeed, Devin Booker has raised the roof so far in these playoffs. He's been tremendous. Millennial Kobe. That's what I'm going to continue to call him until somebody stops me. And who
Stop.
raised the roof? Well, that's fine. I'll stop, and I'll tell you that it's brought to you by Shamrock Roofing and Construction, Kansas City's local residential and commercial roofing contractors. One call does it all. I think the Suns get right on through the Clippers, and the NBA playoffs have been a blast so far. But especially as a Suns fan, I have found my breath again. You know what? It's not that hard to believe that things are getting better as a Suns fan, and it also isn't hard to believe that your roof is getting better if you're calling Shamrock Roofing and Construction, where one call does it all.
Cuts next.
Mick Schaefer's brought to you by Atomic Cowboy Sports Saloon. As seen on Food Network, Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, and Man vs. Food, try it today at 42nd and Pennsylvania in Westport.
Joe Domino here, host of KC's Neon Jazz Radio. For the 2023 NFL Draft, KC presents an all-day jam session at the Blue Room off 18th and Vine from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. April 27th. For over 60 years, KC pianist and bandleader Jay McShann was one of the most influential blues and jazz artists of the 20th century. He shaped the KC sound. His orchestra featured a young Charlie Parker that would forever change jazz. Brought to you...
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Let's get into the cuts, shall we? Let's have some fun to end the week, even though it hasn't been the best of weeks. So certainly from a baseball standpoint, if you're just joining us or listening in, Chris Bubich, Tommy John surgery. So he is and gone, Bubich, and gone, optimism, and gone, silver linings, and gone, my sanity.
Can I get a Tommy John as Denny Matthews?
And Tommy John, and John Bubich. All right, let's go ahead and cut it up, Drake.
And I don't want to be known as a fur daddy.
The only reason I look forward to going to my wife's family reunion down in Paris, Tennessee, is because it's like one of the catfish capitals of the world, and the catfish is freaking amazing down there. And I'm like, yeah, we can go there. We'll drive 8 hours for amazing catfish. Oh, we get to see your family. Oh, cool. That's fine.
Only. You said only.
I thought I said one of.
Yeah.
I meant one of.
Did you do Bill in front of Bill?
Mick, how are you? Welcome to the show.
No, I'm liking your point. No, you're right. Then it was you're right. I was send you an emoji with a couple of thumbs up or something.
Guy who has had 17 consecutive ideas shot down. Why would you think this idea was being shot down?
Adam was preemptively saying, getting defensive.
Buttload of water up there.
Don't let the whole buttload go all at once, but
No.
you figure out your sweet spot. Yeah. Well, I said it. That's not what I meant, but I said. What was that noise?
Chip away at the free throw line and then dribbles, shoot the ball, then you slowly walk to go get it and get back to the free throw line. I can do that. You know what sucks practicing free throws? 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts.
Yeah, I just don't practice free throws.
Well, that's a you choice.
Just practice dunks.
Just a dunk.
Air Briscoe.
He's got a warm front. Hey,
Appreciate
anytime.
it. Thanks for bringing your buttload, Mick.
Anytime. I always is with me.
That was the end of the show on Monday.
Yeah. I told Mick you had a perfect dismount that when you said thanks for bringing your buttload, he could have been, that follows me everywhere I go.
Didn't have it.
Nope.
Someone, I guess, didn't have a great grasp of the names, and they brought you up, and they said, "Yeah, I'd like to bring up a pitcher, Mike Bodicker."
I've been called a lot worse. Butt liquor, everything else.
He said butt liquor, everything else. But that also means now I have to wear pants.
That's why I, for years and years and years, did the show exclusively in tidy whities, and nobody knew except for Beards and Rudy. And guess who doesn't work here anymore?
Awesome!
Yeah! Les Norman loves new rules.
He does.
So how's your family, Bud? Everybody good?
Everybody's good. All 150 of them. Whatever I got out there. It's
How many grandkids you got?
12.
Now?
12 grandkids.
No way.
Yeah.
You got to tell your kids to put a TV in the master bedroom. And give her the remote.
We're too late for that, George.
Yeah. Too late. George Brett, tell your kids to put a TV in the master bedroom. You got 12 grandkids.
Kyle Charles, what's 14 times 5?
14 times 5. 60.
No. That's rough, Kyle Charles. We can go out and win right now with what we have, but we happy with what we have, but we can get deeper. Always looking to get deeper.
Oh, Jason. Okay.
Really?
Weird.
Really? That's one of the worst that we've done. You even ate it in the shower.
We did the whole interview just like this.
Yeah.
It was great.
They caught you on camera.
Wasn't me. To quote the notorious Shaggy, it wasn't me.
And you know what? I wouldn't be opposed to different Royals players signing one-day contracts.
Yeah,
and bringing
fantasy
them back.
camp.
Like Brett's playing third base tonight. How many people would show up to see Brett play third base tonight?
Can you stop saying his name for the sake of my question that's still out there, please?
Son of a gun. You would mark that. That was actually a question that George Brett was the answer to, and I just started talking about Brett playing that. It'd be great if Brett was out there. Idiot.
Hear that again, Drake?
What was that?
That was Drake making a noise after I said the thing about Mick finding a sweet spot with a bidet.
Oh, that's right. Sweet spot bidet.
There's one fresh one in there, Drake. There's one from today.
Oh, there's a fresh
I added
one?
it like an hour ago, and it ended up being prophetic.
It was pathetic.
Both, yeah.
How about that, huh?
I feel like that one's going to be it. Look, Drake, there's a great chance I saved it in the wrong folder, and hey, good news, tease for next week.
All right.
It's us complaining about baseball.
It's a prophetic tease.
Baseball making us sad.
It does. So I'm going to go ahead and by the tweet came in from David Kohler. It says, don't worry, Royals will win. I bet $55 on Angels covering the 1.5. Well, you know what? I went ahead and rocking a same-game parlay there at DraftKings with the Angels minus 1.5. Total runs over 9.5 because the Royals give up that anyway. And Ohtani, 7 or more strikeouts. Go ahead and give me that 4.5 to 1 tonight. It's not even an emotional hedge because if they win, I'll just be annoyed that they didn't. I didn't win the money.
I think I'm just gonna go trim my hedges.
Good
shows this week.
Literal, right? That wasn't a figurative.
No. I'm just gonna go outside and
not a metaphor.
Stare at the sky sadly.
Yell at clouds.
Radio 810 WHB.
Sports Radio 810 WHB is the official broadcast partner of the NFL Draft in Kansas City. We'll have a live broadcast from Radio Row, the NFL Experience, Union Station, Arrowhead, Power and Light District, Big Brothers Big Sisters Draft Night event, and from our broadcast headquarters. We'll bring you all the selections live as they happen, interviews with Brett Veach and Andy Reid, and introduce you to the newest Chiefs draft picks. So